Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. Fantasy. It turns out that I am a peerless god of war. Chapter 1. Step up, 7 stars, step down, step across tigers, Shuangbalian is the head gun, King Kong is pounding the cone. A whole set of Taijiquan flowed down, and Yifeng put on his gray robe and stood up. Flying clouds and flowing water, hi. Thinking back on the Taijiquan set just now, Yifeng sighed complacently. With his current comprehension and understanding of the boxing technique, if placed in modern times, he would be a proper master of the generation. But now, hair is useless. Yifeng shook his head helplessly, waved the dust on his body, picked up the ceramic kettle, and lay down on the reclining chair. It has been 20 years since he had traveled through this world. It is very different from his previous life. This is a cultivation world where the strong are respected. Yifeng, who was mediocre when he opened a fried chicken restaurant in his previous life, was full of pride when he first crossed the road. Thinking of making a big difference, he would do more repairs with a few female nuns who were prettier than celebrities. These days are really happy. But what he didn't expect was that his natural meridians were blocked, so he was not suitable for cultivation at all. Ding, the boxing technique is complete, and it has reached the level of parity with gods. Hearing this system's voice, Yifeng's heart didn't fluctuate, and he even wanted to scold his mother. Host: Yifeng. Age: 20. Cultivation: mortal. Achievement: fist with gods. Swordsmanship: on par with gods. The stick method: parry with the gods. Swordsmanship: parallel to God. Palm law: parallel with gods. Forge iron: to stand shoulder to shoulder with gods. Painting books with gods. Healing: on par with God. That's right, Yifeng traveled to this point and was blessed with the golden finger that belonged to him. But the golden finger did not bring him anything about cultivation. I also gave a martial arts hall, and all the other things that have been improved or related to the martial arts hall. After years of hard work and systematic help, these skills have all been cultivated by him to the highest level of standing shoulders with gods. Said to be on a par with gods, I was afraid that he was a big celebrity in his previous life, so he could be broadcast live on TV. But here, is there any use? Not to mention a master, even if a low-level martial artist gave him a fist, he would not be able to stand it. I've struggled, complained, and cursed my mother, but over the years, Yifeng has also let go, and he can't cultivate. Forget about it, guarding 1/3 of his acre of land and being a salted fish. Ahem, a generation of masters, it seems not bad. After all, he also thought about it, it's hard to say whether he can stand it or not when he really cultivates, maybe he has to go to the secret realm, the sect is fighting, and if he is not careful, it may be cool. Looking at the sunlight outside the window, Yifeng got up and stretched before opening the shop door. Afterwards, he took out a lot of martial arts moves that he had drawn on the book. In fact, this is his biggest source of income, because there are not many people who really let him teach kung fu. Although those mortals cannot cultivate because of their talents, they have absorbed some spiritual energy after working hard day and night. Maybe they are more powerful than him. Therefore, it is also possible to sell these martial arts cheats and eat them. Business is not bad or not, it's still in the future. Of course, most buyers also buy pictures for children as storytelling. There are a lot of cultivators recently. Yifeng sighed as he watched the streamer light across the sky. I cannot cultivate, but it is not far from the monks. There are 2 large sects not far from Pingjiang City, and many disciples also come to the city to purchase some daily necessities. I heard that the 2 ancestors of Qingtianmen and Xuanwuzong made a life and death gambling contract, just a few days later, so countless Nansha monks came to watch the battle, said a small vendor who knew Yifeng next door. Oh, Yifeng nodded and stopped paying attention. After all, this matter had nothing to do with him. Hey, sister, it's so strange that you read these books. I've never seen a book like this before. At this moment, 2 figures, one large and one small, appeared in front of the door. The little one with pigtails, although not yet fully developed, but from the perspective of facial features, when he grows up, he is also the color of the country and the city. He blinked a pair of smart big eyes and looked curiously at the martial arts book on Yifeng's booth. Another woman was quite different. Dressed in white, standing there gives the impression of a fairy descending from the earth, with a beautiful face, but it gives people a cold color, as cold as frost, as if refusing to be thousands of miles away. Cultivator. Yi Feng looked at the two women and was slightly surprised. Not to mention that these two girls are beautiful, but he didn't expect to be monks, which was an unprecedented first moment for him. The woman in white, Luo Lanzu, also looked at Yi Feng. Sitting leisurely, the gray robe is spotless, and the delicate face always has a faint smile, giving people a sense of being out of the ordinary. All in all, it makes people look comfortable. Unfortunately, he is a mortal. Luo Lanzu then withdrew her gaze, showing a little disdain on her face. No matter what, mortals are still mortals, just ants. Sister, I want to buy a copy, okay. The little girl Yin Luoli didn't think so much, and blinked at Luo Lanzu. Luo Lanzu frowned slightly. The duel between her master and the ancestor of Xuanwuzong was just a few days later. The rumors are different, but as a direct disciple of Qingtianmen's ancestors, she understands that the odds of winning are only 20%. Now that the Qingtianmen is in the midst of fire and water, her little junior sister still has such a leisurely and elegant way, it really makes her angry. Luo Li, go. Luo Lanzu reprimanded. Sister, what do I want? Yin Luoli raised a small mouth and said pitifully. Luo Li, we still have things to do, don't waste time. Luo Lanzu taught. Besides, as monks, what can mortals buy? Yi Feng's face was black. This is really unpleasant. Yin Luoli lowered her head and pouted her mouth. Her beautiful eyes were filled with mist, but she still stopped in front of Yi Feng's booth and refused to leave. Luo Lan's face was frosty. She really didn't know what to say about Yin Luoli. With a wave of his palm, a gold coin fell into Yi Feng's hand, picked up the martial arts book, and left with Yin Luoli. Hey, 1 gold coin is not enough. Yi Feng looked at the gold coin in his hand and shouted quickly. But what was greeted was Luo Lanzu's icy gaze, which made Yi Feng swallow the next words abruptly, so he had to find the steps and said, that's it, this little girl is quite cute, so let's take her as a gift. Quote. After they left, Yi Feng gestured in the direction they left. If it hadn't been beaten, the ass of life and death would open flowers for you. After Yin Luoli got the martial arts book, she was very happy, and left other things behind, and read it with relish. Wow, sister, this book is really good. Yin Luoli couldn't help but admire. Luo Lanzu ignored her. Just a picture book for mortals, what's so good about it? Sister, elder sister, just take a look. Yin Luoli couldn't help holding Luo Lanzu's jade hand and said coquettishly, it's really beautiful. Luo Lanzu showed sullen anger. The way behind Qingtianmen is unpredictable. She has no intention of looking at these things. Just as she was about to turn around to teach her a lesson, she inadvertently saw the pattern on the corner of the martial arts book. In an instant, the pretty body trembled. She only felt something that made her terrifying blowing towards her face, her complexion suddenly changed, and she vomited out a mouthful of blood. After taking a few steps back, Luo Lanzu stabilized her pretty body, ignoring the injury, and looked at the martial arts book in Yin Luoli's hands in shock. This is martial intent. Thinking of this, Luo Lanzu set off a storm in her heart. What exactly happened here? She actually saw Wu Yi in a picture book sold by mortals. If it weren't for the trauma in her body reminding her, she might think she was dreaming. Wu Yi, that's the stuff of legend. Not to mention him, even if it is his master, a martial arts expert can't comprehend martial intent at all. She was able to recognize that this was martial intent, and that was when her master, Qingshan Patriarch, brought her sect inheritance, and she felt a little martial intent, but compared with the book, it was like a firefly. Light is not worth mentioning. Sister, what's wrong with you? Yin Luoli asked worriedly when she looked at Luo Lanzu who was vomiting blood. I'm fine, can you show me the book in your hand? Luo Lanzu asked urgently. Of course you can, isn't this really beautiful? Yin Luoli said with her little arm outstretched. Luo Lanzu solemnly took the martial arts book with both hands, but found something, and immediately looked at Yin Luoli in shock. Luoli you. At this moment, Luo Lanzu's pupils dilated, her heartbeat accelerated rapidly, and her whole body trembled slightly, as if she had seen something that was difficult for her to believe. What's wrong with me, sister? Yin Luoli asked with big eyes. Your realm, Luo Lanzu said in shock. How can your realm improve so much? When she went down the mountain, she was the first level martial artist when she was checking Yin Luoli's realm, but now the 5th level of martial arts. What? When Yin Luoli heard this, she quickly felt her realm. Really? I'm really a genius, haha. After Yin Luoli found that her realm had really improved, she immediately boasted happily. But Luo Lanzu took a deep breath. Yin Luoli's talent is not false, but it is absolutely impossible to reach this level, and it is even more impossible to break through the 5th level in a short period of time. The only reason is that she looked at the martial arts book in her hand. At this moment, she only felt uneasy. With a pretty face and a solemn face, she stabilized her trembling jade hands, took a deep breath, and couldn't wait to open the martial arts book again. Tai Chi. What caught my eye were these 3 big characters. The handwriting seems to be scribbled and curved, but it is vigorous and powerful when you look closely. With just 3 words, Luo Lanzu was deeply attracted, and a different world seemed to appear in her eyes. A strange gossip picture. She is in the center of the gossip picture, looking up. The vast starry sky is full of stars, and the ancestors form a strange pattern. Unconsciously, she turned to the next page. The villain in the picture is lifelike, her pupils dilated rapidly, and the vast palm print gently pushed towards him. Her breathing suddenly became rapid, and the sweat dripped down her forehead. At this moment, she felt like a small boat in a storm, which could be destroyed at any time in this vast land, so she hurriedly closed the martial arts book in her hand and stood there breathing heavily. Sister, what's the matter with you? Yin Luoli quickly grabbed Luo Lanzu's arm and asked worriedly. Luo Lanzu couldn't help but calm down for a long time. After a long time of recovery, just as he was about to speak, he was surprised to find that his realm had broken through from the 9th level of a martial artist to a great martial artist. Luo Lanzu was dumbfounded. Martial masters and great martial artists are a big gap between cultivators. Many people are stuck in the 9th level and cannot cross them for life. Although she has her own talent, it should be a year later if she wants to break through. But now, a breakthrough can be achieved without a cup of tea. I have to say that the news of their sisters breaking through today is likely to cause a sensation in the entire Nansha. She wiped the sweat from her forehead and held onto the martial arts book in her hand like a treasure. Sister, what's the matter with you? Yin Luoli looked at Luo Lanzu with an abnormal demeanor, and became more and more worried. My sister, who has always been strict with herself, is in a state of cultivation at all times, isn't she too anxious and angry? Luo Li. Finally, Luo Lanzu calmed down, grabbed Yin Luoli with her arm, and said very solemnly, promise me, I will never reveal a word about this. Why? Yin Luoli blinked her big eyes and asked suspiciously. You don't need to ask so much, you just need to know this. Luo Lanzu took a deep breath and said solemnly, this may be the biggest opportunity in your life, and it may also be related to my Qingshanmen, life and death. What? Yin Luoli was a little bit overwhelmed by this information. Also, I want to take it back to Master for the first time. Luo Lanzu continued. All right. Yin Luoli scratched her head. She hadn't finished it yet. Although she was reluctant to part, she seemed to be really serious when she saw her sister's expression. Also, she really can't figure out how this has become the biggest opportunity in her life, and it can also be related to Qingshanmen. Life and death. Luo Lanzu dragged Yin Luoli to the sect. In retrospect, what kind of mortal is that young man with extraordinary temperament sitting on the reclining chair? He is bound to be a peerless expert that is unimaginable for her, and his realm has already reached the level of returning to the original, and he came to this small town to play games. Autumn comes, leaves fall. Guarding this small martial arts hall, I don't know how many springs and autumns have come and gone. There was an endless stream of people coming and going, and Yifeng was already familiar with the customs of this other world. Oh, it's time to eat, order a takeaway. Yifeng got up and beckoned to the beef noodle stall across the street. The servant on the opposite side snapped his fingers and shouted, Master Yi is waiting, he will be here soon. Yifeng nodded with a smile, and lay down on the reclining chair again. Oh, take out every day, I lack a wife. The sun was dazzling. Yifeng narrowed his eyes, looked at the little girls in the rouge shop on the street, and couldn't help but sigh. Yinger doesn't come to see me recently, and I think about entering the sect to cultivate every day, but I don't have that talent. It would be great to follow me as a boss lady. One day I am lucky to accept 2 disciples, and people can still be called a teacher. Not long after, the boy opposite came over with beef noodles. Servings are adequate as always. Come on, I'll give you the money. Yi Feng threw the money away. Master Yi, what's the money for a bowl of beef noodles? The servant returned the money and said with a smile, last time the old ladies in my family fell and got hurt, and I had to rely on you to do it. Okay, then I'll eat this side for nothing. Yi Feng is also not polite. The commoners on the streets are very familiar with him. He has been a man of 2 generations, and he knows the truth of being a human being. No matter what family is injured by bruises, he will often help the beggars who are often wandering nearby. Relief. So in this piece, it can be considered a bit of prestige. Although I haven't really taught my apprentices, I can be a Master Yi. Little beast, get out of here for me. At this moment, what happened not far away caught the attention of the 2 of them. A little boy dressed in tatters was thrown out from the entrance of the Qingshan gate. No, I want to practice. Please, let me join Qingshanmen. Although the little boy is only 14 or 15 years old, he is very determined. He doesn't care about the scratches on his face, shouted. I don't even care about your qualifications, and I want to join my Qingshanmen. Get out. Elder Tanko kicked the boy's chest and shouted at the same time, Stinky boy, I will warn you one last time, if you dare to come again, I will give you throw it away and feed the dog. This is. Yi Feng frowned. Oh, this child is also pitiful. The little servant sighed. I don't know where it came from. In the past few days, the hall entrance of Qingshanmen has been broken through. I guess it is really unqualified. Yi Feng was inexplicably sad. Cultivation is so cruel, without talent it is nothing. It's better to be yourself, to be a grand master of a generation, although not too ambitious, is quite a good way of life. The boy's mouth was overflowing with blood, and he was coughing violently while holding his chest. He looked at the closed door with resolute eyes, full of unwillingness. After a long time, he took up heavy steps and left. Seemingly seeing the attention of Yi Feng and the servant, he also looked up when he passed by the door, glanced at the beef noodle in Yi Feng's hand, swallowed a mouthful of saliva, then averted his eyes and continued to leave. But just after taking 2 steps, he stopped and bent down to pick up something from the ground. Looking around, he stayed at the beef stall opposite for a moment, gritted his teeth, and finally turned his eyes back to Yi Feng. Shopkeeper, I picked up a gold coin at your door. Is it yours? The boy came over, and he really held a gold coin in his turbid little hand. Yi Feng and the servant looked at each other. They all saw incredible things in the eyes of the other party. This made Yi Feng feel ashamed for a while. This is the way the world is. Although he felt sympathy for the little boy, he couldn't help it, but the quality of the little boy made him feel ashamed. It can be seen that he is already hungry, but he still maintains this spirit. Yes, this gold coin is mine. Yi Feng nodded. If he guessed correctly, it was the one given by the paralyzed woman. The boy handed his little hand forward. But Yi Feng didn't answer, but smiled lightly at him. It's yours now. The boy was surprised, bowed gratefully to Yi Feng, and hurried over to the beef stall opposite. We have a guest. Yi Feng smiled at the servant next to him. Master Yi's merits are boundless. The little servant gave Yi Feng a thumbs up and ran towards the opposite side. Remember, take more weight, the money is not enough to count on my account. The little boy devoured and ate a bowl, only to find that he was still in the mood. He licked his tongue and wanted to continue, but seeing only 1 gold coin, he had to endure it. The prices here are not low, and a gold coin is only enough for a bowl of beef noodles. Just when he was about to get up, the servant brought him another bowl full. Shopkeeper, who are you? The boy asked in surprise. The little servant smiled and glanced in Yi Feng's direction. The little boy followed him, his eyes shone with light. After silence, continued to devour. Seeing this scene, Yi Feng smiled, covered his face with the fan to block the dazzling sunlight, and leaned down toward the reclining chair. The benefactor is above, and I will be worshipped by Zhang Qing. Please accept me as a disciple. Suddenly, a little boy's voice came from beside him. Yi Feng turned his head to look. The boy kneeled on the ground gratefully, and looked at himself firmly. You want me to accept you as a disciple? Yi Feng asked in surprise. Yes, I figured it out. I don't have the qualifications, and I can't enter the Qingshan gate. The benefactor is not only kind to me, but also opens a martial arts hall, and also asks the benefactor to fulfill it. With that said, Zhang Qing's head slammed on the ground again. As long as master is complete, Zhang Qing is willing to do his best for master. Yi Feng clicked his tongue slightly. I didn't expect that the first person who apprenticed to him would be in such a situation. Either way, not to mention the quality of this child, just the energy makes it difficult for him to refuse. Okay, I promise you. Yi Feng nodded. Thank you, master, for making it happen. Zhang Qing quickly knelt down and thanked him. Without a word, he took Yi Feng's bowl of noodles and sent it back to the opposite stall. This kid is really sensible. An ant-like smile appeared on Yi Feng's face. Since he was his first apprentice, he couldn't neglect him. After Zhang Qing returned, Yi Feng took him into the inner room. Did you use a knife? Yi Feng looked at him and asked. Yes. Zhang Qing lowered his head. The rusty sword around his waist had already betrayed him. Master has nothing to give you, I will give you this knife. Yi Feng took out a long knife and stretched it towards Zhang Qing. As soon as the big knife came out, the rays of light flowed, with a wisp of threatening aura. This knife is the most satisfying weapon among the weapons that Yi Feng has produced. Anyway, I don't need it myself, so it is natural to give it to my apprentice. Thank you master for the gift. Zhang Qing couldn't put it down and quickly thanked him. According to legend, thousands of years ago, there was a green hill behind Pingjiang City. The green hills towered into the clouds, like the sky. Later, a peerless master passed by with a sword, flattened the green mountain, and created a sect here. Jiyu is the gate of Qingshan. It has been passed down from generation to generation. Although one generation is not as good as the next, Qingshanmen is still a holy place for many people to practice for many years. A grand hall. Luo Lanzu rushed over anxiously. Disciple, please see master. Luo Lanzu knelt at the door and shouted respectfully. Shui, why are you so abrupt, disturbing the teacher to retreat? Finally, a majestic voice came from the hall, with sullen anger and a trace of exhaustion in the voice. Hearing this, Luo Lanzu was not feeling well. Soon after, the master will compete with the ancestor of the Xuanwu sect, and his strength is inferior to him, not to mention the wickedness of the ancestor of the Xuanwu sect. It is no wonder that the master is still in retreat at this time. But thinking of this, Luo Lanzu couldn't wait even more. Master, this disciple has something to ask for. This matter may be an opportunity to defeat the Xuanwu ancestor. The opportunity to defeat the Xuanwu ancestor. Old ancestor Qingshan was slightly startled, and then his voice became sullen. How do I usually teach you? How can you become a big talker? How can the battle between me and Xuanwu be controlled by your juniors? Go back. Don't disturb me again. Master, this disciple doesn't dare to talk big. Luo Lanzu lowered her head quickly and said anxiously, Master, please be sure to meet me. There was a brief silence in the hall before a majestic voice came out. You disturbed me so much during my retreat. If things are not what you said, don't blame me for not showing you mercy. The voice fell, and the door of the palace slammed open. Luo Lanzu breathed a sigh of relief, holding the martial arts book in both hands respectfully and walked towards the hall. She got her wish to see the ancestor of Qingshan. Old ancestor Qingshan sat cross-legged on the futon, the anger on his face subsided slightly, listening to Luo Lanzu's speech, with a suspicious look on his face. You mean, a mortal? Old ancestor Qingshan asked. Yes, the master, to be precise, is a peerless master who plays the world, disguised as a mortal. Luo Lanzu added. HMPH, nonsense. The ancestor of Qingshan said angrily. If there is such a master in Pingjiang City, how can I know that the ancestor of Qingshan doesn't know? It's ridiculous to show martial intent. Master, please believe me, this book is from the senior's hand, master can tell when he sees it. Luo Lanzu said quickly. Humph. Old ancestor Qingshan snorted softly, waved his palm, and the martial arts book appeared in his hand. A look of disdain appeared on his face. The leveling is unremarkable, there is nothing outstanding, and it does not contain the slightest energy. If it weren't for Luo Lanzu being one of his most valued disciples, he would have slammed it out with a palm at the moment, and he wouldn't have wasted time on a broken book. I also ask master to open it and take a look. Luo Lanzu said quickly, as if remembering something, and did not forget to remind, I also ask Master to adjust his mood and be careful to suffer backlash. Hearing this, the ancestor of Qingshan showed an impatient look, and then casually opened the martial arts book. In an instant, he, whose expression was casual and impatient, suddenly changed dramatically. The sitting posture is suddenly upright. Inadvertently, the body also became trembling. Shocked, incredible, stunned. A series of expressions changed on his face, but even so, he still couldn't express his mood at the moment. It was like setting off a stormy sea, and it was difficult to calm down. He never imagined that what Luo Lanzu said was actually true. This unremarkable broken book, which he didn't take a look at, actually contained monstrous martial intent when he opened it. The moment he opened the book, he seemed to be immersed in another world. As a martial arts master, the ancestor of Qingshan, he felt so small in the power contained in it. What kind of person does it take to be able to draw such a wonderful book? What is even more incredible is that, looking at the brush and ink on it and the subtleties of the strokes, it is obvious that this person is just a random painting. Just a painting created at random contains unbelievable martial intent. How profound is his cultivation? Luo Lanzu looked at the eyes of the ancestors of Qingshan, and couldn't help showing a wry smile. Wasn't that the case when she saw this for the first time? This further cemented the idea in her heart, that the young man lying on the reclining chair with his palm fan is bound to be a peerless master who was never born. But the more so, the more difficult she felt. On the one hand, I was excited that Qingshanmen could get such an opportunity. On the other hand, my heart became more and more uneasy, and there was anxiety and fear in the corners of my eyes. Ha 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 ha. At this moment, from the mouth of the ancestor of Qingshan, there was a hearty laugh, his hair rose, and an invincible momentum was exposed from him. I saw him swept up from the futon, like a rocket, directly smashing through the roof and swept into the air. At this moment, clouds surged over Qingshanmen, and the wind and rain were about to come. After a while, it rained heavily, and countless spiritual energies gathered towards the ancestors of Qingshan. He was like a hot little sun in the middle of the sky, shining with dazzling light in the rain. What? Master actually broke through. Luo Lanzu covered her red lips in surprise, watching this scene in surprise and shock. The entire Qingshan gate also fell into a huge sensation. I don't know which Eggy is doing things again. The clothes I just dried are not dry yet. Lying on the reclining chair, Yi Feng showed a displeased expression and spit out. Although he had never eaten pork, he had seen it before. Although he had never seen such a big movement, Yi Feng knew at a glance that it was made by a cultivator. Zhang Qing, how's Ma Buza doing? After taking off the clothes, Yi Feng looked at Zhang Qing, who was directly entering the training. At this moment, he was stomping on his horse, and he didn't know how long he had lasted. His thin body was trembling, and drops of sweat fell from his forehead, but he kept persevering. This is really a good seedling, but unfortunately this is a cultivation world. If you want to be in a previous life, you will definitely become the second Bruce Lee. Thinking of this, Yi Feng couldn't help but scold his mother. His mother's cultivation world, giving him a whole martial arts system is really wrong. Zhang Qing, take a rest, go and make 2 bowls of beef noodles on the opposite side and come back. You can't practice martial arts without dying, you have to pay attention to the combination of work and rest, so Yi Feng said in a timely manner. Yes, master. Zhang Qing wiped his forehead and shouted, then ran to the beef stall opposite in the heavy rain. While waiting for the servant to be below, Zhang Qing raised his head and looked at the sky in the distance. Oh, this kid. Yi Feng shook his head. He could see that Zhang Qing still had a strong obsession with cultivation. He stayed here, I am afraid he just wanted to repay his kindness. It's a pity that his talent is there, and he can't get into Qingshanmen with such talent. Hey, there's nothing I can do as a teacher. You said that as a teacher, if you can know 2 people from Qingshanmen, maybe you can help you walk through the back door. But being a teacher is just a mortal. For a whole day, the ancestors of Qingshan stepped from the realm of martial arts to the realm of kings of martial arts. This step is like a carp jumping over a dragon gate. This is in the forefront of the entire Nansha cultivation world. Ha ha ha, Xuanwu, you forced me to accept a duel with you, but if you know now that I have broken through the realm of king of martial arts, I don't know how you would look. Old ancestor Qingshan's face changed with glory, swept away the decadent look before. Congratulations to Master for breaking through the realm of King Wu. Next, Luo Lanzu kneeled on the ground respectfully. The ancestor of Qingshan flashed past, and lifted Luo Lanzu with both hands, and said with a smile, Shuiye, get up, I blamed you for my teacher before. Enter my Qingshanmen annals. Master is serious, it is Shuiye's duty to do it. Luo Lanzu said. By the way, I've been busy with breakthroughs before, hurry up and tell my teacher, that mortal, no, senior, what is the matter with him? Old ancestor Qingshan gently stroked the martial arts book in his hand, eagerly asked Luo Lanzu. He looks very young and good-looking, and his temperament is very unusual. Luo Lanzu gradually enlarged the figure and said by saying, I thought it was nothing at the time, but in retrospect, his behavior reveals a generation of masters, a feeling of. Old ancestor Qingshan squinted his eyes and carefully scrutinized Luo Lanzu's words, go ahead. He runs a small martial arts hall and sells a lot of martial arts books. Luo Lanzu added. A lot of martial arts. Old ancestor Qingshan was short of breath and opened his mouth wide. Luo Lanzu nodded solemnly. Shuiye, you must not look at this person young, based on your description, I guess he is a super old monster. Qingshan Patriarch said solemnly, and I initially speculated that his cultivation base should be Emperor Wu, realm. The Emperor Wu. Hearing this sentence, Luo Lanzu was shocked. Most of this world is based on martial arts, and it is divided into warriors, great warriors, martial arts, martial kings, martial emperors, Wu Zong, Wu Zun, Wu Sheng, and Wu emperors. The existence of this level is already rare, after all, the realm behind is mostly just legends. At the beginning, the ancestors of Qingshan who opened the mountain gate with one sword seemed to have only the cultivation of Emperor Wu. However, this is only a preliminary guess for the teacher. What will happen? We need to see this senior before we know it. Old ancestor Qingshan said thoughtfully. So Shuiye, you and I go down the mountain with me to see this senior. Senior. Heard. Luolin Shuechen's body trembled, and he said hesitantly, Master, I. What's wrong? Old ancestor Qingshan frowned. I'm afraid, I have offended this senior. The worry in the corner of Luo Lanzu's eyes was finally released, with a deep regret on his face, and his bowels were blue. For the past 2 days, let alone how tangled and complicated her heart was. It was so overwhelming that she could hardly breathe. Although the sect crisis was solved with the breakthrough of Qingshan ancestors, but thinking of her disrespect in front of the stall that day, my heart was dead. Under the pressure of Qingshan Patriarch, Luo Lanzu explained the scene in front of the stall nervously. Old ancestor Qingshan changed when he heard it. Master, I was wrong. Seeing this, Luo Lanzu slammed her head heavily on the ground, and her tears came out anxiously. I really thought he was immortal at that time, and I didn't even know that he was an unborn master. Humph. Old ancestor Qingshan's face was ashen, and he pointed at Luo Lanzu. You, even if he is immortal, you can't just give him a gold coin. Me, but I only had 1 gold coin on my body at the time. Luo Lanzu explained anxiously. And I think that's all, 1 gold coin is definitely enough. Besides, I was thinking about the comparison between you and the Shuangwu ancestor at that time. Fighting, that's why I made a big mistake at one time. Old ancestor Qingshan was silent. He thought it was Hong Fu of Qingshanmen, but now things are so troublesome, if he is not careful, his Qingshanmen may be destroyed. You can come back alive, it's really a big fate. Qingshan ancestor said with emotion. Luo Lanzu's tears contained, and her heart was full of bitterness. Who said it wasn't? In retrospect, she simply walked through the gate of hell, and maybe it also affected the entire Qingshanmen because of it. It's fortunate that the junior sister is here. Luo Lanzu said happily. Although I only gave the senior a gold coin, the senior didn't pursue anything, and said that it was to give the book to the junior sister. I guess it was for reading. For the sake of the cute little sister, this is the time to spare my life. So, it's better for the master to go to see the senior. Luo Lanzu said in a low voice. Old ancestor Qingshan thought for a while, then shook his head solemnly and said, not only can you not go, but you must go. Luo Lanzu opened her red lips. But master, if I went to arouse that senior's anger, it would inflict the Green Mountain Sect. this consequence, so I think it's better for me to avoid it. Luo Lanzu raised her head and asked. HMPH, what do you know? Old ancestor Qingshan taught him a lesson. With that senior's eyesight, if you thought that if you didn't go, he wouldn't know that you were my ancestor of Qingshan and a disciple of Qingshan sect. Hearing this, Luo Lanzu's pretty body trembled. Since this senior didn't do anything to you at that time, it means that he didn't take these little things to heart. Old ancestor Qingshan stroked his beard and said, in his capacity, if you will make amends with me later, I don't even bother to care about a junior like you. On the contrary, if we do some little tricks behind the scenes and act like a clown who jumps on the beam, it is possible to provoke that senior. Master's teaching is justified, so the disciple will take the blame and let the senior deal with it. Luo Lanzu gritted her teeth and nodded. Afterwards, the ancestor of Qingshan grabbed Luo Lanzu and turned into two streamers and swept towards Pingzhong City. Teacher, fight hard and go get some wine for the teacher. At the door of the store, Yi Feng took the wine gourd, gave Zhang Qing an order, and walked out of the hall door. Master Yi. Master Yi. In the past, many people greeted Yi Feng. Ahaha, long time no see. Yi Feng also had a smile on his face, clasping his fists in response. Master Yi, come and play. The smell of rouge powder came, and several women with enchanting figures and delicate facial features waved at Yi Feng with their handkerchiefs upstairs. Cough cough, no more. Yi Feng said embarrassedly. Come on, Master Yi, you are so handsome, let's have a few drinks, no money. A few women laughed. I can't be fooled by you. Yi Feng gave them a blank look with a smile. Although he didn't know them in depth, they were considered his old acquaintances. At this moment, there was a commotion on the street, and many hawkers rushed forward. Master Yi, hurry up, I heard that there is a stupid dog on the street from nowhere. The dog's meat is delicious, and the key is to drink. A hawker shouted to Yi Feng. Guzi, it's a good thing, remember to catch it and leave a half a caddy to me. Yi Feng shouted. Although a dog is a good thing, it is not his turn to catch so many people. Just as he was about to continue to drink, he found that the riot was rushing towards him, and he saw many people with poles and long sticks greeting a silly dog. For a while, it screamed and ran around. The dog is suffering now. It is about to cry. It is really a tiger who fell and Pingyang was bullied by a dog. I am obviously a demon wolf that eats the sky. How can I become a stupid dog in the mouth of this group of mortals? Grass. He was running around. Seeing that there was no way to escape, his eyes lit up. Except for a little white face who walked leisurely with a wine gourd, there seemed to be no one else blocking him. This is a way out. Just rush from here, even this little white face can't stop me. Oh, what a stupid dog, I'm really sorry. Yi Feng's eyes lit up when he saw the dog rushing towards him. Since this silly dog insisted on giving it to him, he could laugh at it. Immediately, the posture swayed. Mortal, dare to stop me, do you really think you can stop me? Guzi growled in his heart, but he did not take it lightly at this critical moment. In order to prevent the boat from capsizing in the gutter, it used the last bit of strength in its body. This trace of power is specially reserved for it, waiting for such an opportunity. As long as the last mortal is broken through, its crisis will be resolved. And Guzi also has sufficient confidence in his heart. Although it is only his last trace of strength, as the demonic power of the sky-devouring demon wolf, how can a mortal be able to stop it? No one noticed. The sun-shaped mark hidden on Guzi's forehead flickered slightly, and the transparent energy turned into a circle of ripples, and he slammed into Yi Feng. Shaolin legs. Yi Feng also just flew over. Boom. They collided suddenly. What? Guzi's naive expression instantly froze. It was as if his head had hit the King Kong, and he was dizzy for a while. The most unbelievable thing was that when the last trace of his demonic power touched the soles of Yi Feng's feet, he instantly felt dizzy. It turned into a cloud of smoke. Why? The dog rolled to the ground, opened his mouth, and passed out. Haha, Master Yi is still amazing. When the other chasing people saw that Yi Feng killed the dog with one kick, congratulations came out. Haha, luck and luck. Yi Feng clasped his fists and smiled, then this dog. Naturally, it belongs to Master Yi. Everyone said that if it were someone else, they would probably fight for it, but everyone knew that Yi Feng was a stupid dog, and they didn't have any opinions. Thank you, then I'll smile. Yi Feng smiled gratefully, grabbed the stupid dog by one hind leg and continued to drink. After a moment, the ancestors of Qingshan and Luo Lanzu finally came to the door of the martial arts hall. Master, it's here, Luo Lanzu said solemnly. When the ancestor Qingshan heard the words, he quickly raised his head and looked at the martial arts hall in front of him. The store is not very big, and it looks ordinary. There is a plaque on the top with a lifelike engraving of the word, Wu. When old ancestor Qingshan's eyes fell on the word, Wu, his body trembled, and the word turned into a huge fist and bombarded him. Dang-a-dang-a-dang. Old ancestor Qingshan accidentally took a few steps back. When he looked up again, he found that the word, Wu, had returned to calm and became an ordinary word. Master, what's wrong with you? Luo Lanzu asked quickly. I'm fine, old ancestor Qingshan said, but even so, his face was full of lingering fears, and his back was already wet with cold sweat. After calming down slightly, he said to Luo Lanzu again, Teacher, do you see the word, martial, on the plaque? Lorraine nodded. This martial character also contains a powerful martial intent. Qingshan Patriarch said in shock. Originally, I thought this senior was a strong martial emperor, but now it seems that I still look down on people. What, Master, what do you mean? Luo Lanzu slightly parted her red lips. I suspect that he is the realm of Wuzong after Emperor Wu. The ancestor of Qingshan took a deep breath, and then said solemnly, because a simple word makes me so embarrassed, it is absolutely impossible for Emperor Wu to do it. After all, I am also King Wu now. Luo Lanzu couldn't calm down. Emperor Wu, the ancestor of Qingshan Gate, can open the mountain with one sword, so what kind of existence does he have as a strong Wuzong after Emperor Wu? She can't imagine. If this senior pursues the original matter, how could she, a little Qingshan sect disciple, endure this kind of dimensionality reduction blow? Relax, disciple. The ancestor of Qingshan seemed to see Luo Lanzu's worries, and patted her on the shoulder. Life and death or fate, this senior probably won't take a junior like you to heart, and take a step back. In terms of 10,000 steps. Luo Lanzu looked up at the ancestor of Qingshan. He really wants to be held accountable. It's useless for you to worry, you can only wait to die. Qingshan Patriarch continued. The corners of Luo Lanzu's mouth twitched involuntarily. Although Patriarch Qingshan's words were unpleasant, it was true. Thinking of this, she took a deep breath and walked nervously towards the martial arts hall with Patriarch Qingshan. The front hall of the martial arts hall was empty. There doesn't seem to be anyone inside. Old ancestor Qingshan said. Well, Luo Lanzu nodded and asked, then what should we do? Don't be impatient. Old ancestor Qingshan patted his butt, sat down on the steps, and said, don't rush in, it's better to wait for that senior to come back. But Master respects you. Luo Lanzu looked at the ancestor of Qingshan sitting on the steps, and always felt that it was not suitable. Anyway, he is the ancestor of Qingshanmen, and his identity is the same as that of the market. If people see, Shui, you are usually a very smart child, why are you so confused now? Qingshan Patriarch educated. According to what you said, this senior has become a mortal playing in the world, so he definitely doesn't want cultivators to disturb him. So, as cultivators, when we visit our door, we must follow the local customs and be mortals. Although that senior can see through us at a glance, we still have to do it like this. What the master said is very true. Luo Lanzu nodded quickly, ignoring the snow-white long skirt, and squatted on the steps in front of the martial arts hall with Patriarch Qingshan. After a while, Yi Feng returned with a jug in one hand and a wild dog in the other. Seeing this, Luo Lanzu's pretty body trembled and whispered, Master. The ancestor of Qingshan also reflected in an instant, and his eyes fell on Yi Feng. Sure enough, a young man. The most important thing is that the ancestors of Qingshan also did not notice the slightest cultivation breath in Yi Feng. Not a single breath of air has been leaked, this realm. Tisk tisk. Old ancestor Qingshan was secretly shocked. Naturally, Yi Feng also saw the two of them, but the old man ignored it. Looking at Luo Lanzu, his face suddenly darkened. What the hell is this woman doing? Before he could speak, he saw Luo Lanzu coming over, arching his fists and looking at Chen Chen. Senior, Shui was not good in the past, and I asked the senior to make amends. Old ancestor Qingshan also hurried over and said with a smile, I have seen the store, and I heard that my niece just bought the store's martial arts book but gave me less money, so I brought her to the door to apologize, and I hope the store's high-hen." Hearing this, Yi Feng looked at the old man. Judging from what he said, this old man should be the uncle of the woman. He is not as imposing as the woman in appearance, and he should be immortal. But after listening, Yi Feng was slightly surprised. I didn't expect that this female monk's family was quite tutored. But they all came to apologize. Yi Feng didn't feel embarrassed, and said with a smile, "Forget it, it's just a small matter, but that's for 10 gold coins, and you have to supply me with the remaining 9 gold coins." Hearing this, the ancestor of Qingshan was shocked and exclaimed, "Senior, do you want 9 gold coins?" If not, Yi Feng rolled his eyes at him. 9 gold coins are enough for him to eat 9 bowls of beef noodles. Besides, 2 people are eating now, so they must come back. After being confirmed, Qingshan Patriarch and Luo Lanzu looked at each other. Excited and grateful, it seemed that this senior really didn't take a junior like Luo Lanzu to heart. However, this senior entered the mortal world really to the extreme. If he really opened his mouth, they would have to take out the treasures of Qingshanmen, but they only asked for 9 gold coins, which seemed to be enough for them to go down the stairs. But having said that, the treasure of his Qingshan gate, this mysterious senior probably doesn't look down on it. "Don't worry, the store owner, we will give you the 9 gold coins right away," the ancestor of Qingshan quickly said with a smile, and then waved at Luo Lanzu. Luo Lanzu's face was ugly, and he hesitantly said, "Master, I have no gold coins here." Old ancestor Qingshan's face turned cold, and he hurriedly put it in his pocket again. After touching it for a long time, he only found 3 gold coins, which were left from the last time he performed the exercises, which made him embarrassed for a while. Yi Feng also felt emotional. It seems that the family of these two is not rich either. It is estimated that the girl's talent is not very good. In order to support her cultivation, she has used up all the money in the family. "I really can't do it next time," Yi Feng said with a wave of his hand. "How about that?" Old ancestor Qingshan's face was full of embarrassment. Forced, Luo Lanzu was also anxiously at a loss. The dignified Qingshanman ancestor and Tianzhijiao couldn't get 9 gold coins together, but fortunately, the two found a few more coins in the storage bag. I don't know. When the gold coins were deposited, only 9 were collected and handed to Yi Feng. After weighing the gold coins in his hand, Yi Feng's affection for the two also increased greatly. Even though he was so poor, he didn't hesitate to make up all his belongings and pay for his actions. The quality is still good. Therefore, Yi Feng didn't blame Luo Lanzu's previous actions so much, so he smiled and said, "It's over, or come in and sit down and have a meal." Yi Feng also thought that the two of them had collected all their belongings for themselves, and it was estimated that the next lunch would be lost. The other party is so sincere, and it is not good for him to neglect others. "Hey, fine." Old ancestor Qingshan was very excited, and he did not expect that this unfathomable senior would take the initiative to invite them to dinner. "Then please come in, I just hit a wild dog, you can have a drink later," Yi Feng said lightly. Hearing this, old ancestor Qingshan and Luo Lanzu cast their gazes on wild dog at the same time. They didn't feel anything at first, but the next moment old ancestor Qingshan trembled. "Hiss, take a breath." He opened his mouth, speechless. "Others can't see it, can't he see it? This is the legendary sky-devouring demon wolf. The heaven-devouring demon wolf is a behemoth in the demon tribe. Not to mention the fact that the tribe is powerful, it has a very strong talent in itself, and ordinary people would not dare to provoke it at all. But this senior actually got a sky-devouring demon wolf to drink. This is really crazy." Looking at the unknown Luo Lanzu, the Qingshan ancestor approached the science and said a sentence, and Luo Lanzu also covered her red lips in shock. Seeing Yi Feng walking in front of him casually dragging the sky-devouring demon wolf, the two looked at each other, unable to calm down. "I'm afraid, only this kind of senior has such a big hand," and directly brought a sky-devouring demon wolf to the bar. Finally, the two followed Yi Feng towards the martial arts hall. Both of them are very curious, what is hidden in this martial arts hall, and what is it like? The high threshold stone is made of bluestone. The two stepped in step by step, and this step was like entering the world from one world into another. On the walls on both sides of the martial arts hall, there are 18 pictures, each of which corresponds to a different martial art, and the weapons they use are different. 3 of them are swords. 18 kinds of weapons are dazzling. Just a glance. The ancestors of Qingshan and Luo Lanzu were immersed in the vast ocean of martial arts. It seems that the entire martial arts hall has become an asura field that can't be seen at a glance. Swords come and swords. It also seems that there are 18 martial arts masters who are taking turns competing in their moves. In their eyes, these moves are mediocre, without aura fluctuations, or even full of loopholes. There is something incomprehensible in the silence. What's wrong? Sit here. When Yifeng's words came, the ancestors of Qingshan and Luo Lanzu suddenly woke up, and cold sweat had already fallen on their foreheads. After slowing down, a look of fear appeared on his face. The pictures on this wall contain monstrous martial arts and martial arts that they cannot fully understand. Although these things are opportunities for everyone, it also depends on whether you can eat them or not, otherwise, it will be the devil that devours you. The ancestors of Qingshan were like this just now. In the vast ocean, they were like a drop in the ocean. The more immersed they were, the more dangerous they were. It's really an inch and a world. Who knows, this small Pingjiang city, this small store, hides such a world. But fortunately, the senior woke me up at the right time, otherwise I'm afraid I'll get lost in it. The ancestors of Qingshan looked at Yifeng with palpitations on their faces, full of gratitude. If it weren't for Yifeng's key words, the consequences would be unimaginable for the two of them. Thinking of this, the two felt a little fortunate in their hearts. Fortunately, Yifeng didn't rush in when Yifeng was away. Otherwise, I don't usually have many people here, and I don't have many decent stools, so just sit on it. Yifeng smiled and poured out 2 cups of tea from the teapot beside him, and brought it to him. The 2 old ancestors of Qingshan were flattered, and quickly got up to take the tea with both hands, with a strong smile on their faces. Yifeng's friendly appearance immediately made them feel a lot more relaxed. It seems that this Peerless master is not only open-minded, but also very approachable. By the way, I didn't ask the store owner's surname. Old ancestor Qingshan asked again. Don't give your surname Yifeng. Yifeng said with a smile and waved his hand. Master Yi. Old ancestor Qingshan hurriedly handed over. Master can't talk about it, so he will open a small martial arts hall in this remote area to eat food. Yifeng shook his head and said, apart from simple food and clothing, I don't dare to ask for anything else. Master Yi's state of mind, compared to Qingshan, I am really ashamed. Qingshan's ancestor shook his head and felt ashamed. Yifeng's strength was monstrous, but he had such an extremely return to the original state of mind, neither arrogant nor coquettish. And he has only just stepped into the ranks of Wu Wang, not to mention that he is high above the Qingshan gate, and he has a very high self-esteem in the entire Nansha. The funny thing is, what does his cultivation mean in front of Yifeng? But the two people's moods are like clouds and mud. Yifeng sighed, secretly saying that if you were like me, I'm afraid you would be in such a state of mind. After finally crossing, I also integrated the golden finger. I thought I could also experience the fun of cultivating immortals. Maybe I can hold a sword in the sky, arrogantly rise to the sky, and become a character who stomps and stomps the mainland. After all, aren't all the protagonists like this? But who knows, it is such a tasteless system. In the first few years, Yifeng thought that there was something that was not activated. Maybe he could open up the next field by practicing those boxing skills and stick skills to the highest level, but the facts told him that all this was. It's he who thinks too much. In short, he has seen it through all these years. In addition to accepting fate, what else is there to do? Not only can I just guard the 3-point land of this acre and eat it. You guys sit here first, I'm going to clean up that wild dog, and I'll have a drink later. Yifeng said with a smile. It was good to meet the old man in front of him initially. There are many ways to be a friend, in case you can help yourself in the future. No, I'm fine. When Qingshan Patriarch heard this, he quickly stood up and said, Master Yi, please don't be so polite. I'm already satisfied with a little home-cooked meal, it's a day-to-day. The dog doesn't have to. Quote. Okay, then eat whatever you want. Yifeng also nodded. It's getting late. I really need to pack up this dog, not to mention lunch. I guess it's time for dinner. Then you all sit first, and I'll put the dog somewhere first. After speaking, Yi Feng dragged the dog towards the back hall. The back hall is where Yi Feng strikes iron. At the beginning, in order to hone the system's ironsmithing skills, he did a lot of ironsmithing, but after the ironsmithing skills reached the level of God's parity, he didn't fight much. It was only when a neighbor who killed pigs or farmed asked him for help, only he will help to shoot 2 pig-killing knives or hoes, which can also be considered as a subsidy for the household. Seeing that Yi Feng didn't ask the 2 of them to eat dogs together, old ancestor Qingshan wiped away a cold sweat. This heaven-devouring demon wolf Yi Feng may not feel any pressure to eat, but his Qingshan ancestor is different. Let alone 1 Qingshan gate, he can't afford to offend 10 Qingshan gates. When the time comes, the demon wolf clan will not dare to trouble Yi Feng. Don't they dare to use his Qingshanman to open the knife. Master, I have practiced. While Patriarch Qingshan and Luo Lanzu were sitting and waiting for Yi Feng, a 13 or 14-year-old boy walked over from the side hall. This senior still has an apprentice. Hearing the sound, the 2 were startled. I am afraid that the apprentice of the senior is also an amazing generation, right? Urgent gaze, cast towards Zhang Qing. The eyes of the 2 seemed to want to see through Zhang Qing. Noticing this kind of gaze, Zhang Qing was a little uncomfortable, but still smiled naively. Have you come here, you 2? Hello. Although I couldn't see the reason in Zhang Qing for a while, but no matter what, this is also the senior's lover, and it is definitely a generation that they dare not neglect. The 2 quickly got up and bowed their hands in salute. Then you all sit first, and I'll go and help Shizhen do things. Zhang Qing nodded, then lowered his head and walked towards the back hall. After Zhang Qing left, the 2 ancestors of Qingshan looked at each other. Master, did you see anything this young man? Why can't I see anything? Luo Lanzu whispered towards Qingshan Patriarch. Old ancestor Qingshan frowned, shook his head and said, forgive Master's clumsiness, and I didn't see anything in this young man. Not only is there nothing outstanding, but I think his meridians are blocked, so he has no talent at all. Then why? Luo Lanzu said inexplicably, why did that senior accept such a person as a disciple? Shish, old ancestor Qingshan glared at her and said, you can't speak so rudely. What master taught? Luo Lanzu quickly shut up, knowing that she had said the wrong thing. She lowered her head and said, I also ask master to clarify your doubts. How can I solve your doubts? Old ancestor Qingshan shook his head and said bitterly, but what I can be sure of is that there must be something we can't see through this young man. It's not a general generation, we can only blame our low vision. The 2 of you have been waiting for a long time. At this time, Yi Feng came out with a smile and said apologetically, maybe I have to trouble the 2 of you to sit here for a while, and I will cook for you first. After speaking, Yi Feng walked out of the martial arts hall, bought some home-cooked dishes from a vegetable stall not far away, and then walked into the kitchen. Teacher, it's not an option for us to sit here. We can't let the seniors do the work alone. Let's help together. After sitting for a while, the ancestor Qingshan got up and said. Luo Lanzu nodded and followed Qingshan Patriarch towards the inside. After the front hall, there is a small yard, which was planted with flowers and plants by Yi Feng. In addition to the flowers and plants, several wooden figurines were erected. A peaceful place, birds chirping and flowers fragrant. Comfortable. Standing in the courtyard, the ancestor of Qingshan was full of emotion and said, Teacher, the mountain behind my Qingshan gate looks like a fairy mist, and it looks like a holy place, but compared with my predecessors, it is full of vulgarity. After some emotion, the 2 walked to the kitchen. The kitchen is not big or small, but it is clean. When I walk in, I see Yi Feng squatting on a small stool and picking beans. Teacher, the senior's state of mind is really hard to study and study. Qingshan's ancestors said with emotion. Senior's appearance of doing everything by himself, if we can calm down and learn 1 or 2, I am afraid that the cultivation will be high. There are not so many bottlenecks anymore. Luo Lanzu nodded her head, felt what her master said, and watched Yi Feng lowered his head to pick beans. She seemed to have realized something at this moment, and her mood couldn't help but improve a bit. Master Yi, let's help you. Old ancestor Qingshan said with a smile. Why is this so embarrassing? Yi Feng raised his head and smiled. Nothing to be embarrassed about. Old ancestor Qingshan waved quickly to Luo Lanzu. Seeing this, Luo Lanzu quickly picked up the peppers from the stove and washed them on the running water beside them. After Luo Lanzu got busy, the ancestor of Qingshan tugged at the corner of his clothes. What should he do? How big is that? After thinking for a long time, I finally found a job and said, Senior, let me help you cut vegetables. That's fine. Yi Feng has never been a restrained person. On the contrary, he likes this feeling more, so he smiled. The kitchen knife is by the cupboard, then I will trouble you. Okay. Old ancestor Qingshan smiled and walked towards the cupboard, looking for a kitchen knife. Suddenly, startled, hiss. For a time, the ancestor Qingshan, who was standing in the same place, trembled all over his body, and his mouth was breathing cold air. And his eyes were fixed on the other kitchen knife beside the cupboard. The kitchen knife seems to be ordinary, but if you look at it, you will find a stream of light flashing by. If you look at it for a long time, I am afraid you will lose your mind. The most terrifying thing is that there is a ray of heavenly power in the flashing light of the kitchen knife. And if he hadn't discovered the power of the heavenly Tao before, it was only after he was promoted to King Wu that he was qualified to capture a little bit. What kind of quality should something possess the power of heaven? Items, holy product, or the legendary emperor? Old ancestor Qingshan couldn't imagine it. He felt like he was going crazy. What surprised him most was that something of such a quality was actually a kitchen knife in Yi Feng's kitchen. Yes, the knife in front of you, please. Yi Feng looked at the dazed ancestor Qingshan, thinking that he didn't know if he was using this knife, so he reminded him. Good. Old ancestor Qingshan nodded like a chicken pecking at rice, shaking his palms, and finally picked up the kitchen knife. It seemed ordinary in his hand, but he felt like it was heavy. He even felt that with this kitchen knife, he who had just entered King Wu could even play 2 rounds with a master who stepped into King Wu with half a foot. Picking up the beans that Yi Feng picked and washed, the old ancestor Qingshan trembled and prepared to cut, but the hand holding the knife trembled uncontrollably. After all, it was the first time for him to come into contact with something of this level, and he was so nervous that he couldn't cut the beans in half a stick of incense. This kitchen knife is really not very easy to use. It seems that it is almost time to replace it. Seeing this, Yi Feng said apologetically. Although the sharpness was okay, he didn't feel comfortable. Hearing this, Qingshan patriarch shivered. Seniors are indeed seniors. Are the requirements for kitchen knives so high? You must know that the kitchen knife he said was not very easy to use is also something that his Qingshan ancestors dreamed of and could not get. In the eyes of the seniors, it is not even qualified to cut vegetables. Senior is really humble. How can such a knife be so difficult to use? Old ancestor Qingshan couldn't help but sigh. If only I had such a knife. Yi Feng couldn't help but sigh when he heard this. It seems that the old man's family is indeed very poor, so poor that there is no decent kitchen knife at home. Not much effort, 3 dishes and 1 soup came out of Yi Feng's hands and brought them to the table. When the first chopsticks were caught in the mouth, the eyes of Qingshan patriarch and Luo Lanzu lit up. The two swear that they have never eaten such a delicious meal in their lives. Looking at the eyes of the two, Yi Feng smiled and nodded. He was still a little confident about the food. Although he is a lazy person, he is also forced to be helpless, because the taste of the food in this world is really not very good. Occasionally eating the beef noodles on the opposite side, Yi Feng can only improve the food by himself. Of course, even with the beef noodles on the opposite side, Yi Feng taught him both. Yi Feng was full of food and drink. Back room. The wild dog who was knocked out by Yi Feng's kick gradually regained consciousness. Ow, it hurts. Mortal, I won't kill you when I recover. Guzi roared in his heart, full of hatred for Yi Feng, thinking that he was not only a member of the heaven-devouring demon wolf clan, but also the son of the heaven-devouring demon emperor, but planted in the hands of a mortal. This is a great shame to him. Hateful, hateful. If it wasn't for me, Ao Qing, who ran away from the tribe and was severely injured by the gangsters, how could this be the case if I couldn't make it through? Don't let me find you, I'll cut you into 8 pieces. Roaring in his heart, the dog finally opened his eyelids. Whoa whoa whoa. At this moment, countless rays of light shot towards him, and he couldn't open his eyes when they were shining. The rays of light seemed to put him in a rain of swords and swords. When he forcibly opened his eyes, he found countless weapons scattered around him. These weapons. Ao Qing opened his protruding mouth in shock. These weapons were actually spiritual items at the lowest level. Gosh, the dog doubts life. Even if he is the son of the heaven-devouring demon emperor, he has never seen so many sacred objects above spiritual items. So much, let alone him, even the old man behind him, I am afraid he has never seen it. What's even more exaggerated is that these weapons are scattered all over the place like tattered pieces. Who the hell is such a big hand? Wrong. Ao Qing seemed to have sensed something again. The weapons scattered on the ground were all defective. Anima. Ao Qing was even more shocked, unable to calm down for a long time. The defective products all have the rank of spiritual products. If these weapons are finished products, what kind of rank should they be? You must know that a master craftsman who makes a finished product into a spiritual product is completely different from a craftsman whose defective product is a spiritual product. God knows what a person who even has a defective product is a spiritual product. Cow man. It's just terrifying. Who is it? What the hell is this place? Ao Qing recovered a little strength from the coma just now, propped up and walked outside, exploring carefully. But accidentally, he stepped into the front hall. The moment he walked into the front hall, he felt that the world was turned upside down, and a powerful coercion descended on him, and then the portraits on both sides of the wall shone dazzlingly, and the 18 weapons in the painting shot at him in disguise. Ow! Ao Qing roared, feeling that his legs and claws were softening, and he ran away without caring about the others. What terrifying thing is hidden in that hall? It scared him to pee just now. What the hell is this place? He panicked and ran in the other direction, stepping in cautiously. Call, breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, there is no such horror. However, someone, and that mortal is there. Ao Qing's eyes were suddenly filled with hatred, and he arched his body and was ready to rush to tear this hateful mortal. Wrong. At the critical moment, Ao Qing stopped his body, and the one who ate with that mortal was. Chapter 11. Master Yi, your food is really delicious. Old ancestor Qingshan's face was ruddy, but he didn't expect not only to go to the kitchen with a senior like Yi Feng, but also to sit and eat Yi Feng's meal together. At this moment, let alone how satisfied he is. To be able to be so close to a senior of this level, if this is said, it will be enough for his grandson to brag for a lifetime. I toast you. Old ancestor Qingshan stood up, then respectfully poured Yi Feng's drink, and then took the lead to drink it all. Master, what happened before was Shuai wrong. Shuai is very grateful to Master for his magnanimity. This cup of Shuai is my tribute to you. Luo Lanzu also respectfully raised the glass and toasted Yi Feng. Haha, you're welcome. Yi Feng also calmly accepted the toast from the two of them. After all, there was indeed some misunderstanding between them. The realm of this old man. Ao Qing looked at the ancestor of Qingshan, the sun mark on his forehead flickered slightly, and then murmured, although this old man hides well, he can't escape the eyes of my demon wolf. I didn't expect it to be in the realm of Martial King. The realm of Wawang is comparable to the demon king of my demon clan. Ao Qing was shocked. The demon king is in the demon race tribe, but he is also a lord of the land. Even in their tribe of the demon wolf, he is still an elder, with a lot of combat power. And that girl, although she only corresponds to the realm of our demon master, but her talent is also very good, and she can grow to a high-level existence with time. The sun-shaped mark on Ao Qing's forehead was towards Luo Lanzu, and then he was surprised. Why, a great martial artist with great talent, and a martial king who is comparable to a demon elder, would be so respectful to this mortal, and also a master? Are these two people having problems with their heads? Ao Qing's claw head was full of puzzlement. When he was hesitating how to kill this mortal, he seemed to have thought of something, and suddenly his eyes fell on Yi Feng. Shut up. He narrowed his eyes and took a breath. Is it this mortal? This mortal. It seems that in order to confirm what Ao Qing said, Yi Feng, who was sitting in the hall to entertain the ancestors of Qingshan and Luo Lanzu, saw the two toast, and just said politely, the two of you don't have to be so polite, but the two of you are visiting the humble house. Nothing to entertain. Gah! Ao Qing's body trembled when he heard this. It was like a blast of thunder sounded in my mind. Now he still doesn't understand. What kind of mortal is this mortal in front of him, but the owner of this house? The spiritual weapons scattered all over the back hall and the 18 terrifying pictures in the front hall were all from his handwriting. Otherwise, why would a master who compares to his demon clan elder, and a beautiful woman with outstanding talent, would be so respectful to him? No wonder, no wonder. No wonder at that time, when I used my demon power to hit this mortal, it was impossible for me to be blocked by a mortal, but I was able to crack it lightly. It must be so. I have heard from the father before that many human masters have brain problems, and they have to pretend to be waste materials to play in the world, and then pretend to be pigs and eat tigers. This person must be like this. Ao Qing believes in his own ideas. Thinking of this, Ao Qing's face was full of anxiety. As far as these handwritings in his house, even his father, the demon emperor, I am afraid it will be difficult to get them out. This is enough to prove that this master who pretends to be immortal is at least the same level as his father, the heaven-devouring demon emperor. A boss of this level is simply the existence that makes him look up. It's ridiculous that he was thinking of revenge before, it's just an egg hitting a stone. But this master, why is he arresting me? Ao Qing was devastated. I have no grievances or enmity with him, and I have nothing to do with him, so I just arrested myself for no reason. After the arrest, 1 didn't hurt him, and 2 didn't kill him. But this is often the case. What people can't guess is the most frightening thing. What's more, how can he guess the mind of a character of this level? After 2 more glasses of wine, Yi Feng felt more and more that this old man was worth making friends with, so he immediately invited him. The 2 of you are in a hurry this time. If you are free, you can continue to come to the humble house next time to sit and wait. Next time I come, I will cut the dog up and make a dog meat hot pot for the 2 of you to eat. Master Yi is polite. Seeing that Yi Feng actually invited him to come next time, the ancestor of Qingshan was very excited, but when he thought of eating the heaven-devouring demon wolf, he became anxious and nervous. But he thought about it, since this senior has been invited again and again, he has nothing to worry about. The heaven-devouring demon wolf clan is really going to be investigated, and I am afraid that they will have to weigh up, who is he sitting with to eat this meat? After all, he is also a character who had lunch with his senior in the kitchen. Think of this. Old ancestor Qingshan also became fearless, raised his hands and said, Master Yi is able to invite me, it is my honor. Then since this is the case, next time I have time, I will bring a good wine, and come to disturb the master again. Good talk. Yi Feng smiled faintly and picked up the food with his chopsticks. Quote, slack. The conversation between the 2 was completely overheard by Ao Qing at the door. Feelings, this master catches me, is he going to turn me into a hot pot? Ah Nima. Thinking of this, Ao Qing lost all his thoughts, hunched over and curled up on the ground, trembling. Gosh, how to do? He is in this situation now, but he can't beat him, and he can't run away. No, I can't die. I have always been looked down upon by my father. I came out this time to prove myself. I couldn't help but prove myself, and I was turned into a dog meat hot pot. Thinking of this, Ao Qing's eyes flashed again. He has already made up his mind to beg for mercy from this master later, and behave well in front of him. Maybe he can save his life and return his freedom. After half an hour, the 3 of Yi Feng were full. Thank you Master Yi for his hospitality. Qingshan and the 2 will leave first. At about the same point, Qingshan's ancestor also began to say goodbye. Okay, disciple, help me see off the guest. Yi Feng hiccuped, beckoned to the 2 of them, and then instructed Zhang Qing. Yes, master. Zhang Qing nodded respectfully, and then sent the 2 ancestors of Qingshan to the door of the martial arts hall. Thank you young master for sending you off. Outside the door, the ancestor of Qingshan bowed to Zhang Qing and said politely. You 2 are polite, master said, you 2 come to sit often when you have time. Zhang Qing nodded and said. Good. The ancestor of Qingshan nodded gratefully, and after another simple exchange with Zhang Qing returned to the martial arts hall. After parting, old ancestor Qingshan stood on the opposite corner of the street with a thick smile on his face. After he went out, he realized that he had just broken through the unstable realm of King Wu, but he actually became extremely solid. This level of solidity is even comparable to that of the martial king who has broken through for decades. Today's trip is not a waste of life. Old ancestor Qingshan sighed. How could he imagine that he, who was almost driven to a dead end by the Xuanwu ancestor, suddenly turned around? Of course, in his view, the biggest benefit is not the breakthrough in realm, but an improvement in mood. The improvement of the mood is elusive, and everything can only be understood by himself, and it is Yi Feng's return to the original and the state of mind that is extremely arrogant and impatient, which makes him understand a lot. On the side, Luo Lanzu was also relaxed. Having offended Yi Feng before, the big stone in his heart finally fell. As such a person, not only did he not care about her, he even invited her to dinner, which really made Luo Lanzu admire. Compared with this senior, the so-called Sect's so-called favored sons of heaven are probably like heaven and earth. It's just that young man, I haven't seen it through yet. Looking at Zhang Qing's back, old ancestor Qingshan sighed slightly, but he still couldn't see what was special about Zhang Qing. But if there is nothing special, how could it be favored by someone like Yi Feng? Shui, follow me to check the history encyclopedia when you go back to Qingshan Gate. I want to see what ability this young man has to be able to worship the senior's gate. Qingshan Patriarch ordered. Yes, Luo Lanzu was obviously also very curious about this, and soon after the two of them were satisfied, they turned into two streams of light and went back to Qingshan Gate. After Zhang Qing came back, he automatically cleaned up the tableware. Yi Feng glanced at Zhang Qing with satisfaction. Although he had to support one more person, it was worth meeting an obedient child like Zhang Qing. Walking into the backyard, I was about to lie back on the reclining chair when I suddenly found a dog staring at me under my feet. What? Yi Feng was taken aback. Isn't this the dog he dragged back? After taking so many sticks on the street, he also kicked him. I didn't expect this dog to come alive. I was going to pack this dog and eat it in hot pot. Really strong dog. The dog's eyes stared straight at him, as if pleading. What is this dog doing? Yi Feng was puzzled. Just as he was puzzled, the dog actually bent its limbs, knelt down towards him, and then kowtowed. Although as the son of the heaven-devouring demon emperor kneeling down to a human being, Ao Qing felt aggrieved in his heart, but thinking that this person was so strong, and that he couldn't help himself, he endured it. Are you begging me for mercy? Yi Feng's face was full of surprise. He didn't expect this dog to be so humane. Guzi nodded when he heard Yi Feng's words. Seeing this, Yi Feng sighed with emotion. He didn't expect this dog to be human. He couldn't help thinking of a husky raised in a previous life, so he waved his hand and said, "Forget it, you are also a life, I won't hurt you, okay?" Hearing this, Ao Qing's heart was filled with joy. I am very fortunate that I have made the decision to beg for mercy. Although it is very aggrieved to kneel, it seems that this expert is still quite good. Ao Qing lowered his head and thanked him repeatedly. Really not bad. Yi Feng leaned back on the reclining chair and lifted the dog's chin with his feet, admiring it. Ao Qing frowned. What is his identity? Although he was not welcomed by the demon emperor, he was still the son of the heaven-devouring demon wolf clan. How could someone pick his chin with his foot like this? And a surge of anger suddenly rose in his heart. Even if you are strong, you can't insult people like this. Still, he gritted his teeth. After all, life matters, and freedom matters. As long as you escape from here, the sky is high and the sea is wide. Since you are so sensible, it happens that I lack a gatekeeper here, so you can stay with me. Yi Feng, such a human dog, didn't want to let it go, so he said again. Ao Qing heard the words, the hair all over his body suddenly shrugged. A wailing in my heart. I didn't expect this person, and I still didn't want to let go of myself. What's the matter, don't you want to? Yi Feng didn't care whether the dog could understand or not, he bent down and rubbed his palm on his head. Who wants to be with a pervert like you? Ao Qing was about to cry. This son still has to prove himself. If he stays here, it is equivalent to. Since my freedom is restricted, maybe someday guests will come, and you will make me into a hot pot again. However, the thoughts in his heart could not be revealed, especially Yi Feng's question just now seemed very threatening to him. He didn't want to finally save a dog. No, wolf life, it will become a hot pot again. So I could only hold back the grief and unwillingness in my heart and nodded my head. Okay, then I'll give you a name. Yi Feng nodded with satisfaction, frowning and pondering. Now there's more Zhang Qing and more of you, and you can't make ends meet financially, so you can call Wang Kai and give it to us. The martial arts hall brings more business. Wang, wealth, Ao Qing wailed in his heart. Anyway, your old man also gave me a loud spot name. That's it, never mind, it's good to be alive now. But this human, originally thought he had a good heart, but I didn't expect. Sure enough, humans are not good things. How could Yi Feng know that this dog can think so much? He just thinks he is a local dog of unknown breed. Remembering that this dog may still have an empty stomach, he shouted, "Teacher, don't waste the leftovers, bring it to the teacher." Ao Qing was stunned for a moment. Then I saw Zhang Qing bring over the leftovers that had been packed up just now. "Teacher, it's a miracle that this dog didn't die, so I plan to keep it, and don't waste the leftovers in the future." Yi Feng instructed Zhang Qing. "Master is merciful." Zhang Qing nodded and said, "I will leave all the leftovers to him in the future." "Good apprentice." Yi Feng smiled admiringly. Hearing the master and apprentice sing in harmony, Ao Qing's face turned ashen. Is the feeling going to feed him with the leftovers? Oh no, I am the dignified heaven-devouring demon wolf, the son of the heaven-devouring demon emperor. How can I eat leftovers? Shame, humiliation, humanity, humans, I wipe your uncle. Ao Qing rampaged in the yard, and in order to save his life, he knelt down to this human being, but he had to endure this kind of insult. How could he do it? No, absolutely not. He bit his mouth tightly and swore secretly that he would not eat these leftovers even if he was killed. Master, this dog won't eat. Zhang Qing opened his mouth and looked at Yi Feng. Ah, maybe he's a bit reckless. Yi Feng touched his chin and said. Then what should we do? Zhang Qing asked. Pour the rice on the slate, he will eat it himself when he is hungry, go ahead and pack it up. Yi Feng ordered. Deceiving too much. Simply deceiving too much. Ao Qing tilted his head and looked at Yi Feng with a fierce light of hatred. Originally, he was very grateful that Yi Feng could spare his life. Now, he only has shame and hatred for Yi Feng. This little look is really similar to the husky in my previous life. Looking at Ao Qing's gaze, Yi Feng couldn't help but rub his dog's head. But in Ao Qing's view, this was another blatant insult. Yi Feng didn't care about him anymore. He had just had enough to eat, and it was a good time to take a nap. He leaned back on the reclining chair, swinging the palm fan from time to time, and snoring slowly. Looking at Yi Feng who was asleep, Ao Qing's face was full of fierce light. I was thinking about whether to take this opportunity to attack this human. But in the end, he was still weak. He is convinced that as long as he does anything wrong, he will be dead. No, I must escape the poisonous hand of this human being, I want to be free. For the whole afternoon, Ao Qing was thinking about how to escape from this devil's land, but it backfired, and it was the only way to go out of the front hall. He stepped into the front hall several times, but was shocked by the 18 portraits and didn't dare to move. Finally, he gave up escaping and lay on the ground tiredly. But I'm so hungry. Lying on the ground, there were bursts of screams from his stomach. I won't talk about Yi Feng here. He had been on the run for thousands of miles before, and he had been hungry for a long time. His eyes, unsatisfactory, fell on the leftovers on the ground. Do not. How could I, the son of the dignified heaven-devouring demon wolf clan, eat the leftovers of this mortal? No way. Ao Qing's eyes were firm. The sky is getting dark. Yi Feng cooked 2 more side dishes. After the meal, he remembered Wang Kai's situation and asked, Teacher, Wang Kai still hasn't eaten. There is no master. Zhang Qing said worriedly, will Wang Kai starve to death? It's all right. Yi Feng said softly, I should still accept my life, and I'll bring the rest of the food to him later. Yes, master. Zhang Qing nodded respectfully. After a while, a new round of dinner was brought to the backyard. Human, when are you going to humiliate me? Seeing this scene, Ao Qing was simply angry. How could I, the dignified heaven-devouring demon wolf clan, succumb to your human hand? Even if I, Ao Qing, starve to death today, I won't eat a single grain of rice from you mortals. Gollum. As soon as he finished speaking, his stomach groaned strangely again. He looked at his dry stomach, and looked at the steaming leftovers. Leave the green hills without worrying about no firewood, so make an exception. Ao Qing gritted his teeth. Just one time. Seeing that Yi Feng and Zhang Qing were not there, Ao Qing walked over and ate the leftovers on the ground. It's delicious. I have to say, the dishes made by this human are really delicious. At the entrance of the meal, Ao Qing was satisfied and couldn't help but praise. After gobbling it all down, there was still something left unfinished. At this time, Yi Feng stepped into the backyard. You're such a cheap dog. You refused to eat before, but now you can't eat everything. Yi Feng looked at the clean slate, raised the corner of his mouth and smiled. Hiss. When Ao Qing heard the words, he grinned and trembled with anger. He now fully understands that this human is treating him as a plaything, insulting him with scraps and leftovers, and still sneering like this. But he didn't dare to do anything to this man. This night, the more Ao Qing thought about it, the more he hated. When Yi Feng came to the backyard the next day, Ao Qing directly grinned at Yi Feng. Yi Feng rolled his eyes at him, completely ignored it, and walked into the back hall. When I was idle, I was idle. I remembered that the kitchen knife in the kitchen was not very easy to use, so I was going to make a new one. Blacksmithing is tiring. Heat, strength, and shape are all indispensable. So after he perfected his skills, he didn't hit the iron very much. What? He was afraid of being too tired and didn't want to do it, but suddenly he remembered something, and suddenly his eyes fell on Ao Qing. Showing a smug smile. But in Ao Qing's view, this smile is simply creepy. He didn't know what tricks this hateful human would come up with to humiliate him. Hey, come on. Yi Feng directly took Ao Qing and walked to the stove where the iron was being struck. Yi Feng thought that changing the bellows a little bit and using a dog to pull the bellows like a donkey would save him a lot of energy. Just do it. The bellows was quickly remodeled by Yi Feng, and then Ao Qing was tied up, and he got a dog bone from nowhere and hung it in front of Ao Qing's mouth. It's the same as dropping a carrot on a donkey head. In this regard, a perpetual motion machine powered by bones was tinkered with by Yi Feng. I'm a genius. Yi Feng praised himself and smiled, kicked Ao Qing's butt, and shouted, let's go. Humanity, I am at odds with you. Ao Qing roared bitterly in his heart. Why insult me like this? You might as well kill me instead. But in the face of death, he still didn't have the courage. Forced by Yi Feng's prestige, he could only slowly start pulling the bellows. But the hatred in my heart is getting stronger and stronger. The bellows was pulled by Ao Qing, and the fire rose. Yi Feng, with one hand tongs and one sledgehammer, began to congeal the red-hot iron in his hand. Boom! As soon as the hammer struck, Ao Qing, who was full of resentment, suddenly widened his eyes. A look of disbelief appeared on his face. This. Ao Qing's face flashed with disbelief. Just now, Yi Feng's hammer went down, and a faint spark sputtered. The sparks turned into stars in his eyes and scattered. Call, where is this spark? It is simply the profound meaning of martial arts. Although he is a monster, his cultivation method is different from that of human beings, but this kind of transcendence can also benefit him greatly. In particular, the little sparks of fire sputtered on his body, which simply made him suffer the baptism of martial arts. At this moment, his injury that could not be healed for half a year actually healed by 20%. Boom! Another hammer down. The fire light sputtered out again, and it fell on Ao Qing sporadically, which made him feel more comfortable. The injury is almost half healed. He turned his gaze to Yi Feng next to him. It seemed to be unremarkable, but for some reason, this figure was infinitely enlarged on Ao Qing's body. I know. Ao Qing muttered to himself excitedly, looking at Yi Feng's eyes not only lost the original resentment, but shed moved tears instead. The purpose of this senior human being to arrest me was to cultivate me, and the reason for humiliating me before must be to temper my state of mind. After all, the father has said more than once that I am arrogant and arrogant. I am a flower in the greenhouse, and I have never been tempered, and this is the reason why he looks down on me. Yes, it must be. Otherwise, how can you explain that this senior has to humiliate me while recovering my injury? Thinking of this, Ao Qing's heart was full of remorse and shame. After this senior rescued him, he not only worked hard to temper his state of mind, but also restored his injury. But what about him? But he was full of resentment towards this senior. Simply mean and ungrateful. The remorse in his heart made him want to slap himself a few times. I can't let the seniors down. Remorse in my heart is useless. Hard work, this is the greatest gratification for seniors. Ao Qing's eyes were filled with firmness, and his limbs sped up even more, and a gust of wind was suddenly brought up. Good dog, not bad. Looking at the vigorous flames in the stove, Yi Feng praised with admiration. Really, living up to the seniors is the best reward for the seniors. Hearing Yi Feng's praise, Ao Qing was extremely excited. When he thought that his predecessors worked hard for him, he no longer felt ashamed to do things for Yi Feng. It was an honor for him to be cultivated by such a senior. In a short while, Yi Feng's new kitchen knife was formed. And Ao Qing was also panting with sweat on his face, but he didn't care about being tired, and instead focused his eyes on the kitchen knife that was still burning. This knife. As soon as Ao Qing finished speaking, Yi Feng glanced at it with satisfaction, then passed through the water, and when he brought it up again, Ao Qing took a deep breath. This knife is an emperor, a master class. No, no. In the end, Ao Qing found that he couldn't tell the grade of this kitchen knife at all, because the kitchen knife had gone beyond the scope of his cognition. He only knew that this was the highest grade divine weapon he had ever seen. I'm really blessed. I actually witnessed the birth of such a magic weapon, and the birth of this magic weapon also had my contribution. Ha ha ha. Father, sooner or later you will find out that my son is no worse than your other sons. If I let you know that I cooperated with this senior to create such a magical weapon, I'm afraid you will never look down on me again. Thinking of this, Ao Qing looked at Yi Feng gratefully. Nobility. Feng Shui took turns, and finally turned to me, Ao Qing. If I stay with this senior for a longer time, then, tisk tisk. Seeing the dog's crazy appearance, Yi Feng rolled his eyes at it. Although I don't know the breed, this product looks like a husky. Probably the husky of this world. Master, a guest is here. Outside the hall, Zhang Qing came over and said respectfully. Oh, here we come. Yi Feng nodded lightly, and while watching the kitchen knife he just struck out, he walked out to the outer hall. At the door stood a girl of 17 or 18. The girl is slim and graceful, with delicate facial features. Although she wears ordinary clothes, she is definitely a top beauty. Yinger. Seeing this girl, Yi Feng's eyes lit up. The girl in front of him was none other than his childhood sweetheart Peng Ying. The two hadn't seen each other for several months. Peng Ying nodded. Go, sit inside. Yi Feng took her jade hand and said with a smile. Forget it. Peng Ying broke free from Yi Feng's arm. He hesitated before saying, I don't want to sit anymore, I just came to have a look. By the way, I have good news for you, I have successfully entered the Qingshan Gate, became an outer disciple. Really? Then congratulations, Yi Feng said, but he was a little complicated. On the one hand, I am happy for Peng Ying. On the one hand, out of selfishness, I don't want Peng Ying to practice. After all, this means that the two may not see each other for a long time. I know, you don't want me to practice. Peng Ying sighed and said, but it is my dream to join Qingshanmen to practice. I can successfully join Qingshanmen. You should be happy for me. Yi Feng smiled wryly, sighed, but also, each has his own way, he really should support Peng Ying's dream. Just accept it. Peng Ying pondered for a moment, then said, I'm leaving first, I'm afraid I won't come to you again in the future. After saying that, she walked towards the door. Yi Feng wanted to speak but didn't know how to speak, but she also understood what Peng Ying said. Since she started to practice, it means that the two are no longer the same. However, as a human being in two lives, Yi Feng is relieved, after all, each has his own pursuit. Thinking of this, Yi Feng caught up with Peng Ying and shouted, I wish you well, it's just uncle and aunt. I will take good care of them. Peng Ying pondered slightly. Yi Feng nodded. His parents have been missing since he was a child. Peng Ying's parents treated him very well. Thinking of this, he stretched out the kitchen knife in his hand and said, I don't have anything to give. I remember last time my aunt said, let him, I'm free to help him make a kitchen knife, bring it to them for me. Looking at the kitchen knife in Yi Feng's hand, Peng Ying frowned slightly, her expression indescribable. Yinger, are you all right? It's time to go back to the sect. At this time, a young man in white robe walked by, holding a long sword in his hand, and asked Peng Ying gently. Brother Wuji, wait for me, I'll be fine right away, by the way, this is my friend Yi Feng. Peng Ying said softly. Okay, then hurry up. The young man said softly. As for Yi Feng, he didn't even glance at him. After all, he was just a mortal, and he didn't deserve to be greeted. He is. Yi Feng frowned. Peng Ying looked complicated, and sighed before saying, I hope you don't blame me. You know that my aptitude is only average, and it is only with his help that I can enter the Qingshan Gate. I can't bear him. As for this knife, keep it for yourself. After that, Peng Ying quickly followed the young man in white robe and disappeared from Yi Feng's eyes. Peng Ying's words echoed in Yi Feng's ears. I can't bear him, but what about him, Yi Feng? How ironic. Grass. Yi Feng cursed. Don't pull it down. Put away the kitchen knife and put it in the kitchen. Teacher, look at the shop. After explaining a sentence, Yi Feng leaned back on the reclining chair, drank 2 glasses of wine, and fell asleep. Qingshanmen Hall. The ancestors of Qingshan sat on the top and bottom with a majestic look on their faces. Apart from Luo Lanzu and others, they were the elders of the Qingshan sect. At the same time, the direct disciples of the elders also stood behind them. It is rare for elites like this to sit together from top to bottom in the entire Qingshan gate. The entire hall was filled with a thick and dignified color. The duel between the Qingshan ancestor and the Xuanwu ancestor will not be stopped because of the breakthrough of the Qingshan ancestor. Originally, I thought that the ancestor of Qingshan had no suspense about this duel after breaking through the realm of King Wu, but just now, I got the exact news that the ancestor of Xuanwu broke through the realm of King Wu as early as 10 years ago. This news made everyone in Qingshanmen feel like they were riding a roller coaster. One is the ancestor of Qingshan who has just entered the realm of King Wu, and the other is the ancestor of Xuanwu who has been in the realm of King Wu for 10 years. It is clear at a glance who is strong and weak. Everyone brainstorm and come up with ideas. Under the Qingshan patriarch, Zhu Yun, the head of the Qingshan sect, said in a deep voice. The hall was silent. In the face of absolute strength, all schemes are vain. Could it be that Qingshanmen is really going to end because of this? At this moment, a white-robed youth with a sword came out. He was the direct disciple of one of the elders. If Yi Feng was here, it would be the one who appeared with Peng Ying before. Yu Wuji, what do you want to say? Zhu Yun asked. Ancestor Qi, Sect Master Qi, since there is no way to target the ancestor of Xuanwu, why can't we avoid the battle? Yu Wuji asked. Hearing this, some of the higher-ups in the hall gave a wry smile. However, they knew that this time they could not avoid the battle. The 2 ancestors had deep grievances and signed today's dual contract decades ago. This contract is sworn by their lives and witnessed by the way of heaven. Anyone who avoids and does not fight will be punished by the way of heaven. And if the ancestor of Qingshan retreats, then Qingshanmen will be defeated without a fight. Forget it, it's useless to rely on you. At this time, the ancestor of Qingshan shouted, although his expression was also solemn, but his heart was much more relaxed than others. Because he had already considered the countermeasures just now. If you can borrow the kitchen knife from Senior Yi of the Yamashita Martial Arts Academy, this battle is not necessarily without the strength of a battle. You all retreat. Old ancestor Qingshan waved his hand. Ancestor, who are you? Before this attention was taken, the ancestors of Qingshan sent people to leave. Could it be that the ancestors knew that they did not have the strength to fight and gave up on themselves? If so, then Qingshanmen. Everyone's faces were filled with deep solemnity and despair. I already have a countermeasure. Seeing this, the ancestor of Qingshan also knew that he needed to give these people a reassurance, so he said, I will borrow a knife, as long as this knife can be borrowed, Xuanwu, but that's it. Knife? What knife? When everyone heard this, they were puzzled. You must know that although Xuanwu and Qingshan are in the same realm, they have 10 years of skill difference. Although a good weapon can greatly enhance the strength, but 10 years of skill, especially in this realm of martial kings, ordinary swords really can't make up the difference. After I have successfully borrowed the knife, I will bring it back to show you. Old ancestor Qingshan said impatiently. If it wasn't for the need to stabilize these people in the door to prevent chaos at this level of the knife, he will not openly take it out. Although everyone still had doubts and anxiety, they still obediently retreated, and at the same time, they were also looking forward to the sword that the ancestors of Qingshan said. Zhu Yun, wait, you accompany me on a trip. However, the ancestor of Qingshan stopped the sect master Zhu Yun. After all, Zhu Yun's identity was still different. He felt that the existence of the senior at the foot of the mountain still had to be known to the sect master. If this girl can't open her eyes and accidentally provoke it, the consequences can't be afforded. The 2 soon reached the streets of Pingjiang City, and they were still some distance away from the martial arts hall. Uncle Master, who are you? In private, Zhu Yun was also the nephew of the old ancestor Qingshan. He looked at the ancestor of Qingshan and asked, why don't we just fly over there? HMPH, what do you know? Old ancestor Qingshan taught me a lesson. You also give me some restraint immediately, and I will act with my eyes on you later. Although Zhu Yun was puzzled, he restrained his breath, and then asked, Uncle, does this small city of Pingzhong have the knife you need? The frog at the bottom of the well. Old ancestor Qingshan taught him a lesson, and he didn't have the heart to talk too much with Zhu Yun. At this moment, he saw Yi Feng with all his heart. As soon as he walked to the martial arts hall, he saw Yi Feng leaning on the reclining chair at the door. It's here, old ancestor Qingshan said excitedly, straightening his body. Uncle, isn't this just a broken martial arts hall? Zhu Yun glanced at it casually and didn't look at it anymore, and asked in confusion, You are the ancestor of my dignified Qingshan sect, why do you do this? To shut up. Also, later, no matter the title or all aspects, it must not be related to cultivation. Old ancestor Qingshan shouted angrily. Zhu Yun didn't dare to talk anymore. Ha ha, Master Yi, old ancestor Qingshan shouted with a different expression. Yi Feng, who was lying in the doorway, took off the fan that was covering his face, opened a glance, sat up and smiled, so it's you. Hey, it's me. Old ancestor Qingshan nodded his head like a chicken pecking at rice, with a respectful look on his face. Aside, Zhu Yun opened his eyes wide. Right, the old ancestor, who usually followed his words at Qingshan Gate, actually looked like a chicken in front of a mortal. Why, obviously, this mortal can be slapped to death with a casual slap. However, even though he had doubts in his heart, he did not dare to talk too much. Master Yi, this is mine. Old ancestor Qingshan turned slightly, preparing to introduce Zhu Yun to Yi Feng. Yi Feng waved his hand and interrupted. I see, uncle and nephew. As expected of a senior. Old ancestor Qingshan was full of admiration. But thinking about it, he was superfluous. With this senior's sky-reaching means, I'm afraid I can see Zhu Yun's identity at a glance. Yi Feng smiled. It's nothing at all. Qingshan is an old man, Zhu Yun is a middle-aged man, the two have a close relationship, and Zhu Yun is so respectful to Qingshan, it should be a relative relationship like an uncle and nephew. But you guys came just in time. I'm out of wine here. Is there any wine? Yi Feng was not polite and asked for wine directly. It was impossible for Peng Ying's woman to not be sad for Yi Feng. There was only a little left in the family. The stock has also been drained. There are some, the ancestor of Qingshan said quickly, but after agreeing, he remembered that he was in a hurry, and he forgot to bring wine at all. Fortunately, Zhu Yun was on the side, and he looked at Zhu Yun. Uncle, there was a bad premonition in Zhu Yun's heart. Your victory fruit Dan, take it out. Qingshan Patriarch said with his hand up. What? Zhu Yun's face was dark and full of reluctance. He could only brew 3 bottles of this victory fruit in a year, which was priceless to him. Usually no one would give up drinking it, but now he wants him to give it to a mortal. Hurry up. Seeing that Zhu Yun was so ignorant, the ancestor of Qingshan was anxious, and his arm stretched out a violent chest and knocked on Zhu Yun's forehead. Uncle Master, please give me some face. Zhu Yun held his head and muttered aggrievedly, I am also the sect master of Qingshan sect. If this is seen, what is my majesty? What's wrong with a little sect master, you're gasping for breath. Old ancestor Qingshan shouted. I warn you, here, even if you're a dragon, just let me be obedient. As he said that, he wanted to knock Zhu Yun another violently. Zhu Yun stepped back quickly, looking at Patriarch Qingshan with a face full of grievances. Don't take out the wine yet. Old ancestor Qingshan shouted. Under the pressure of Qingshan Patriarch, Zhu Yunkai reluctantly took out Shengguodin. Look at your stingy, babes, it's your honor to be able to let you take out this wine today. Old ancestor Qingshan snorted and grabbed Shengguodin, then changed his face and said with a smile, Master Yi, the wine is just so-so, and I don't know if it suits your taste, so please let me know. Yi Feng smiled. He has never been polite. He took a sip and said, the wine is good, but it almost tastes bad. The ancestors of Qingshan have always been chickens pecking at rice. But Zhu Yun, who was beside him, almost ran away. This mortal is a bit too popular, isn't it? You must know that his victory fruit Dan is priceless. As the sect master of Qingshan sect, he only has 3 bottles a year, but this mortal actually said that his victory fruit Dan is a little bit worse in taste. He really couldn't understand why the ancestor Qingshan was so polite to this mortal. If it weren't for the ancestors of Qingshan here, he would not dare to act rashly, and with his status, he would have made this mortal into a meat pie. But with the ancestor of Qingshan, he could only suppress his anger in his heart. Teacher, move 2 more stools. Yi Feng shouted. Zhang Qing quickly moved out 2 stools. Haha, watching the sunset on the horizon, the beautiful scenery at dusk, and having a drink is a life. Yi Feng said with a smile. Yes, old ancestor Qingshan sat down on the small stool next to Yi Feng and sighed with emotion. This evening seemed beautiful to him, but he was ashamed that he could not understand the mood of the senior. Humph, Zhu Yun snorted softly in his heart. If this mortal hadn't looked at the ancestors of Qingshan, he would have died 10,000 times a long time ago. The dignified ancestors of Qingshan and his gatekeeper of Qingshan came here. This mortal would not invite them into the house to entertain them. Stool sitting at the door. Who do you look down on? But because the Qingshan ancestor was not easy to attack, he just stood there without saying a word. A startled glance. Seeing the martial arts book on Yi Feng's stall, he subconsciously reached out and turned it over. Stop. Seeing this, old ancestor Qingshan took a stride and grabbed Zhu Yun's palm. Others don't know what these martial arts books are, how could his Qingshan ancestor not know? That is a divine artifact with monstrous martial intent. Yi Feng seems to be arrogant, but it doesn't mean that they can move around at will, so even if this kind of fetish is in front of him, the ancestors of Qingshan dare not raise the slightest covet, but Zhu Yun doesn't know what to do. Move, don't you want to die? If it arouses that person's displeasure, I can't imagine the consequences. Who told you to touch other people's things? Old ancestor Qingshan shouted. Zhu Yun's face was aggrieved. As the sect master of Qingshan sect, a mortal thing, he turned it over and turned it over. What's the big deal? His uncle's reaction is too big. Seeing this, Yi Feng couldn't help but sigh. The quality of this old man Qingshan is really excellent, so he hurriedly said, it's just some gadgets, just take a look if you want, it's nothing. Hearing this, Qingshan patriarch breathed a sigh of relief and let go of Zhu Yun's palm. Zhu Yun casually opened a martial arts book. The moment it was opened, the 3 characters of King Kong Fist suddenly magnified in Zhu Yun's eyes, accompanied by the monstrous martial intent, and then turned into a beast and rushed towards Zhu Yun. What? Zhu Yun was shocked, his pupils almost burst, and he quickly dropped his cultivation base to block it, but he couldn't stop it at all. The mysterious fist bombarded him as always. Puff! Zhu Yun groaned, and almost spit out a mouthful of blood, with a look of sluggishness on his face. Hoa hoa hoa. Zhu Yun was breathing heavily on the spot, his forehead was covered in cold sweat, and his heart was full of fear at the same time, and he looked at the ancestors of Qingshan. Old ancestor Qingshan also had a solemn expression on his face at this time, and he was not feeling well at this moment. Because when Zhu Yun opened the martial arts book just now, he also glanced at it, but this time watching the martial arts book is not as good as the last time. The 3 characters of King Kong Fist filled with martial intent attacked him like a turbulent wave. When his cultivation is high, he is not as embarrassed as Zhu Yun. As for the reason for this, I am afraid it is because of their cultivation. His Qingshanmen took the feminine route, and the previous Taijiquan just fit them and could bring them benefits. The King Kong Fist is the most rigid boxing technique, which just restrains them. Of course, in Qingshan's opinion, why Zhu Yun just opened this kind of supreme fist, this must be Yi Feng's intention. I'm afraid, it's Yi Feng's ignorance of Zhu Yun, so let's take a little punishment. However, Yi Feng did not pay attention to the strangeness of the uncle and nephew. Feeling a cool breeze, he got up and said, it's a little cold, you 2 should come in and sit with me. Saying that, Yi Feng got up first and walked into the house. Uncle, this is. After Yi Feng left, Zhu Yun looked at Patriarch Qingshan in disbelief and asked. You. Old ancestor Qingshan pointed at Zhu Yun and shouted, you are usually very good, but this time, why are you so lacking in vision? Do you know that you have already walked through the gate of hell just now, and you almost got hurt? Dead me. Uncle, what the hell is going on? Zhu Yun asked. You still ask me what's going on, can't you see it? Old ancestor Qingshan shouted. You really think that I am so clever that I will be polite to a mortal? Do you really think the young man in front of you is a mortal? What? Zhu Yun was shocked. Yes, but he really doesn't have the slightest cultivation base. Humph. Old ancestor Qingshan snorted angrily and said, "You can't see that his cultivation is not because his predecessors lack strength, but because your vision is not enough, not to mention you, I can't see through his cultivation at all. You only need to know that he is a return to nature, and the martial arts book next to him is the best proof. And you were disrespectful to him just now, and you turned things around. The injury on your body is the lesson the senior taught you. You'd better keep it in mind." Old ancestor Qingshan taught word by word. Zhu Yun remembered the fear of Wushu just now, and suddenly took a breath. I didn't dare to question the words of the ancestors of Qingshan, and at the same time, my heart was full of fear. In retrospect, I really walked through the gate of hell. No wonder his uncle was so polite to him. Hate, I can only hate myself for being stupid like a pig. I didn't see it at first. But Shishu, how could such a great power like this appear in this small Pingzhong city? Zhu Yun asked again in confusion. Asked about this, the ancestors of Qingshan also became solemn, looked at the distance and said, "I guess it is this senior who played the world, and we just happen to be lucky, but it is more likely." Old ancestor Qingshan hesitated. What is? Zhu Yun took a breath and waited nervously for the next sentence. Do you know that in ancient times, with Pingzhong as the foundation, where was the radius of 10,000 miles? Asked the ancestor of Qingshan. Zhu Yun shook his head. Ancient books say that in ancient times, Pingzhong was a land of immortals with a radius of 10,000 miles. Although it declined for some unknown reason, since ancient times, Pingzhong has also been a place of battle for soldiers, which is enough to show that Pingzhong is not an ordinary place. Qingshan the old man explained. But, does this have anything to do with this senior? Zhu Yun asked suspiciously. The ancestor of Qingshan sighed with emotion. I don't know if it was Zhu Yun's stupidity or why. After pondering for a long time, he said, Pingzhong must be hiding unknown secrets, so this senior may also be based on Pingzhong, the entire Nansha. For the scope, the next game of gigantic chess. As soon as the words of Qingshan patriarch fell, Zhu Yun's body trembled suddenly. Taking Pingzhong as the foundation and Nansha as the model, we will play a big game. This kind of handwriting, just thinking about it, it feels so terrifying. But as the sect master of Qingshan sect, he couldn't even imagine it. But if it weren't for this, how could someone as powerful as Yifeng appear in a small place like Pingzhong City? But master, if that's the case, aren't we? Zhu Yun asked with wide eyes, as if thinking of something. Good. Old ancestor Qingshan did not deny it. If this is the case, then we are all chess pieces. How about that? Zhu Yun asked anxiously. Foolishness. The ancestor of Qingshan glared at Zhu Yun and taught, if you think about it in a different way, you will not have such worries. Master, what do you mean? Yes, being able to become a senior's chess piece is not only a bad thing in my opinion, but the biggest opportunity for my Qingshan gate. Speaking of this, Qingshan patriarch sighed and said, since the past 500 years, my Qingshan gate has been declining day by day. Pessimistically speaking, sooner or later, it will be submerged in the long river of history, and even if it is not, it will only survive. Are you willing? Old ancestor Qingshan's voice fell into Zhu Yun's ears, making him tremble. Are you willing? Certainly unwilling. However, can it really get his wishes? Qingshan patriarch said. However, we can't figure out what senior's thoughts are, but we can take the opportunity to ask senior. Walk. Come in with me. The two walked into the martial arts hall one after the other. The first time he walked into the front hall, Zhu Yun fell directly into the 18 pictures, but fortunately, the experienced ancestor Qingshan pulled him back. But even so, Zhu Yun was so frightened that a cold sweat broke out all over his body. Now, he was completely convinced by the strength of the master of this martial arts hall. As for the matter of becoming a chess piece, I have no intention of becoming a chess piece, and I have even seen the moment when Qingshanmen has returned to its peak. Hey, what about Master Yi? Passing through the front hall and coming to the back courtyard, there was no trace of Yifeng, but Zhu Yun, who was on the side was frightened enough, pointed at the locust tree and said tremblingly, Uncle, look, yes, sky-devouring demon wolf. Old ancestor Qingshan glanced at the heaven-devouring demon wolf tied under the old locust tree, and said contemptuously, is it necessary to make such a fuss? Uncle Shi, is that the demon wolf that eats the sky? Zhu Yun continued to exclaim. Look at you like that. Old ancestor Qingshan gave Zhu Yun a blank look when he saw the hillbilly. Isn't it just a demon wolf that devours the sky? When he came last time, he almost asked the senior to bring it to drink. What's the big deal? Of course, when he thought so, he completely forgot that he was no better than Zhu Yun. I'm sorry, I just went into the house to cook some food, you can sit here as you like. At this moment, Yi Feng came out of the kitchen with a kitchen knife in his hand. Seeing this kitchen knife, Qingshan Laozi, who was originally polite, shuddered, and his eyes were fixed on the kitchen knife in Yi Feng's hand. Zhu Yun, who was beside him, was still in shock from the heaven-devouring demon wolf, but when his eyes came over, he felt like he was struck by lightning. Hiss. At this moment, his mood simply doesn't know how to describe it, it's just a wave of unresolved waves. In short, this kitchen knife was even bigger than the shock he had brought by seeing the sky-devouring demon wolf. For a time, the two of them stared at the knife in Yi Feng's hand, and at the same time, the ancestor of Qingshan guessed that Yi Feng suddenly took out this knife for what purpose? Could it be? Is it? Thinking of this, old ancestor Qingshan swayed excitedly, especially watching Yi Feng approaching with a kitchen knife. His breathing became more and more rapid. Ha ha, Yi Feng smiled lightly, and at the same time stretched out the kitchen knife and said, here it is. As soon as Yi Feng's words fell, the qi and blood of the ancestor of Qingshan swelled, and he felt that he couldn't breathe. Really, the senior had already seen through his intention to come here, and before he could speak, he directly took out the knife. Such a great grace, it just made him burst into tears. Master Yi's great kindness, Qingshan is unforgettable. His hands solemnly and tremblingly took the kitchen knife in Yi Feng's hand, and Qingshan's ancestor knelt down in excitement. On the side, Zhu Yun also reacted. I finally understood that the knife that the ancestor Qingshan was talking about was the kitchen knife in front of him. It's no wonder that when the whole sect was frowning over the ancestors of Xuanwu, the ancestor of Qingshan, who was the party involved, remained calm and said that he was going to borrow a knife. At the beginning, he didn't realize that there was any sword that could surpass the 10-year cultivation in the realm of the King of Wu, but now that he looked at it, his worries were completely dispelled. Following old ancestor Qingshan, he also knelt down towards Yi Feng. What are you doing? Get up quickly. Seeing that the two of them actually knelt down, Yi Feng hurried to help them. But the two of them stubbornly kowtowed a few times on the ground before they were willing to get up. Hey, why are you doing this? Isn't it just a kitchen knife? Yi Feng said with emotion. The reason why he gave the kitchen knife to the ancestors of Qingshan was also because when we cooked together last time, the ancestors of Qingshan had said that it would be good to have such a kitchen knife. He could see that old ancestor Qingshan longed for a kitchen knife at home. No, it just so happened that he built a new one, and the old one couldn't be used anymore, so he gave it to the ancestor of Qingshan directly. In this world, the rich are rich, and the poor are truly poor. Especially for people like Qingshan, I don't think there is a decent kitchen knife at home, and I don't know how they usually cut vegetables, or they may be twisted directly by hand. Well, thinking about it this way, Yi Feng also quite understands that they are so excited. Maybe this knife is a help in the snow for them. To you, Master Yi, it's really just a kitchen knife, but to me, it's like a help in the snow. Old ancestor Qingshan said excitedly. Really? Yi Feng sighed slightly, feeling quite sad for the ancestor of Qingshan. The ancestor of Qingshan carefully put away the kitchen knife, and his gratitude to Yi Feng reached the sky. I thought that this trip to borrow a knife would be difficult. After all, it was such a high-level fetish. He and Yi Feng were only friends at the same time. But who would have thought that the predecessor, the prophet, gave him the knife without waiting for him to speak? With this knife, he has full confidence to fight Xuanwu ancestors. This not only saved his Qingshan ancestor, but also saved his entire Qingshan gate. Therefore, it is no exaggeration to bow down to Yi Fengxing. After a long time, the two people calmed down a little from the surprise, not as gaff as before. Master Yi, it is difficult for me to repay your kindness to Qingshan. Although I know that my things are not worth mentioning to you, please accept them. After speaking, Qingshan ancestor took out from the storage bag a fiery red bead. As the beads were taken out, the temperature of the entire surrounding continued to rise. Teacher, uncle, the flame beads. Zhu Yun exclaimed in surprise. He didn't expect that the ancestors of Qingshan actually took out the treasures of Qingshanmen. But think about it, what is it to be able to borrow a treasure saber from the seniors and pay a flame bead? Master Yi, please accept it. The ancestor of Qingshan bowed, holding the flame bead in both hands and holding it up to Yi Feng. This thing. Yi Feng pondered the flame bead and found that it was red all over, and it emitted a very high temperature from the inside. Of course, this is another world after all, and there are so many strange things. Yi Feng is not surprising, it is quite good to be a souvenir. This thing is quite pleasing to the eye. I like it very much, so I will accept it. Yi Feng did not reject Qingshan, he knew that Qingshan was a very polite and personable person. This kind of person is reluctant to directly take the benefits of others. So if he refuses, it will make old ancestor Qingshan feel that this is something that he despises. Seeing Yi Feng accept it, Qingshan patriarch breathed a sigh of relief, but his face was somewhat helpless. Before giving the gift, he actually racked his brains a lot. After thinking about it, he decided to take out this flame bead. In his opinion, after all, it is the treasure of his Qingshanmen, and it is not considered a treasure in the eyes of this senior. But it's enough to be astonishing. But in the end, in his mouth, it was just a decoration, which made the old ancestor Qingshan feel frustrated. Sure enough, different identities have different visions. After thanking him again and again, old ancestor Qingshan seemed to remember something, and asked meaningfully, Master Yi, I don't know what your plans are in the future. Can you tell my uncle and nephew? Hearing this, Zhu Yun on the side also opened his ears. Chapter 21. What plan can I have? Yi Feng sighed with emotion, and said helplessly, for the time being, I can only guard 1/3 of this acre for food, and of course it would be great if I could take in a few more apprentices. Quote. Oh, old ancestor Qingshan nodded, a little disappointed in his heart. The reason why he asked this was actually in the hope of being able to ask Yi Feng about the direction of the overall situation in the future. If he could know a thing or two, then his master and apprentice would be on a shortcut. But Yi Feng's words seemed to be an answer, but he didn't say anything. Since Yi Feng didn't want to reveal it, he naturally didn't dare to ask more. However, being able to successfully borrow a knife today is already a complete success. After a while of greeting, the two hurriedly said goodbye. After walking far out of the martial arts hall, the two regained their breath and turned into two streams of light and flew towards Qingshan Gate. Just after returning to the Qingshan Gate, the Qingshan ancestor hurried inward. Uncle, wait for me, wait for me. Zhu Yun followed behind Qingshan's ancestor, and said flatteringly. What? Old ancestor Qingshan asked angrily when he regained his senses. Hee hee. Zhu Yun rubbed his palms and said with a smile, Uncle, can you show me that knife? What's so beautiful about you? Old ancestor Qingshan shouted. Just take a look, just take a look. Zhu Yun bowed his body and said humbly. Humph. Old ancestor Qingshan snorted coldly and took out the knife impatiently. Call. As soon as the blade came out, it brought a different aura. Zhu Yun's small eyes narrowed into a slit, and he carefully raised his palm to touch it. In an instant, the ancestor of Qingshan put the knife away. Okay, after reading it, I will go to retreat for a day and inform the senior officials of Zongzong that there will be a meeting tomorrow. After all, the Qingshan ancestor turned into a streamer and has already escaped. Zhu Yun's face twitched with his palm hanging in the air, and he shattered in the direction of Qingshan's ancestor leaving, but he still did not dare to neglect his order, and hurriedly informed everyone in the sect to hold a meeting tomorrow. Dog, come here. Lying in the courtyard, Yi Feng waved to Ao Qing. Ao Qing wagged his tail diligently, and came to Yi Feng's feet with narrowed eyes. Playing dogs is Yi Feng's daily routine. After masturbating, Yi Feng stretched and then took off his shirt, revealing his smooth and healthy skin. Put a punch. If you don't move, your muscles and bones will be disintegrated. After all, Yi Feng stretched his muscles and bones, and he was already in meditation when he walked to the side. Afterwards, a set of Shaolin boxing was unfolded. Although he did not have a cultivation base, his boxing skills had reached the level of being on par with gods. The fighting was also turbulent, and every move and style showed a sense of beauty. Ow! On the side, Ao Qing stared, and couldn't help but let out a howl, almost going crazy with excitement. From the moment Yi Feng started to gain momentum, the surrounding space was filled with martial intent. It was obvious that the moves were not complicated, but it was a simple punch, but it had a very profound feeling. Unconsciously, Ao Qing seemed to have realized something, and his realm directly broke through a level. But gradually, he became more and more incomprehensible. What's even more peculiar is that he wanted to write down this set of punches, but found that he couldn't remember what Yi Feng's previous moves were. At this time, this set of punches had already been beaten by Yi Feng to a white-hot state. When Ao Qing was excited to watch it again, he found that he was dizzy. Ao Qing hurriedly closed his eyes, knowing that this was not a level that he could covet at all. Gradually, Yi Feng finally stopped. Comfortable. After wiping the sweat on his forehead and not exercising for a long time, he felt extremely comfortable with a set of punches. Looking at the appearance of the dog next to him, Yi Feng smiled. After rubbing his dog's head, he smiled and said, "How is it? Your master is amazing." Ao Qing called twice. "Sample, it's really smart." Yi Feng took a sip of water and said with a smile, "If that's the case, then I'll do it again." Putting down the teacup, Yi Feng re-entered the meditation. After finally getting into this state, it is also very good to exercise more, and another set of internal boxing is slowly unfolding in his hands. Ao Qing's face was ugly. Senior, I know your hard work and you want to cultivate me well, but you, old man, also depends on whether I can support it or not." The Shaolin boxing just now made him dizzy and almost burst out, but Yi Feng developed another more esoteric boxing. He didn't even dare to look at this punch. Of course, it's not that you don't want to, the key is to see if there is that fate. A set of internal fists came down. Yi Feng was sweating, but felt extra comfortable. After taking a shower, Yi Feng lay down on the reclining chair again. Afterwards, he took out the flame bead given to him by the ancestor of Qingshan, and put it in his hand to figure out. Sure enough, it's a beautiful piece of art. After looking at it for a while, Yi Feng didn't find that this thing had any substantial effect. But Yi Feng looked down at the fallen leaves on the ground. It turned out that summer had passed and autumn had already entered. The autumn in this world is no different than the autumn in the previous life. The autumn here is already very cold, and in winter, it is even worse, with snow everywhere. For practitioners, this kind of weather has little effect on them. But for a mortal like him, it was enough to make him freeze into a dog. And this bead, when the temperature cools down in a few days, you can use it as a stove for me, haha, it's clean and hygienic and saves trouble. The most important thing is to save money on charcoal fire. Yi Feng was impressed by his own ingenuity, stretched out, got up and walked to the front hall, and found Zhang Qing sitting on the threshold in a daze. Yi Feng raised his head slightly and found that Zhang Qing's attention turned out to be the practitioners who passed by from time to time in the distance. It seems that this child still has a cultivation heart. Yi Feng sighed slightly. Hearing the sound, Zhang Qing quickly got up and shouted respectfully, "I have seen master." Yi Feng waved his hand. He approached Zhang Qing with his hands down, looked up at Yuan Kong, and sighed, "I know, you have something hidden in your heart." Zhang Qing was slightly surprised. Yi Feng smiled and just told him to sit down on the stool. Although the autumn leaves are falling, it is also a fruitful season. The streets in front of the door are still endless. The master and the apprentice are sitting at the entrance of the martial arts hall in silence, relatively speechless. "Maybe, you don't really want to tell me." Finally, a voice came from Yi Feng's mouth. Zhang Qing turned his eyes away. "But no matter what, being a teacher doesn't stop you. The hall of Qingshanmen will absorb fresh blood every 10 days. If you want to, try your luck every 10 days. Yi Feng said. Zhang Qing gritted the crown of his teeth and remained silent. Yi Feng didn't say a word anymore. Seeing that there were fewer people in the street, he got up. "It's time to cook," he said. "Master." Suddenly, Zhang Qing stopped him. Yi Feng slowly tilted his head and looked at the little boy whose face was scorched by the autumn wind. "I have a grudge. I have a blood feud." Zhang Qing's eyes were red, tears were swirling in his eyes, and he said to Yi Feng, gritted his teeth, it seemed that speaking out would bring back bad memories for him, so speaking out seemed very courageous. Yi Feng was silent. "The enemy is very strong, so strong that I can't breathe." Zhang Qing firmly grasped the knife that Yi Feng gave him, tremblingly said, "There are elders of Qingshanmen, even the ancestors, powerful." Yi Feng's palm also tightened subconsciously. I can only step into the path of cultivation, and maybe there is a chance. Zhang Qinghong looked at him and said. After a long silence, Yi Feng nodded. Turn around. Also red eyes. My heart is a little astringent, and I hate it, and I am even more angry. The world is difficult, and Zhang Qing has to endure so much at a young age. He is only a mortal if he hates powerlessness. He is even more angry that the way of heaven is unfair, and Zhang Qing himself does not have the qualifications to cultivate. Cultivation sect. After all, it is too far away. A person like the elder and sect master of Qingshanmen is already at a height that mortals cannot reach. As for the ancestors of Qingshanmen, mortals only listen to rumors and have never seen him. The next day, Qingshan Gate Qingshan Hall. Old ancestor Qingshan sat on the top with a little embarrassment on his face. Since borrowing the sword yesterday, he has been practicing hard for a day in seclusion. This peerless divine sword really did not disappoint him, and directly raised his combat power to a higher level. However, because the martial intent was too profound, it could not be fully used flexibly. During the hard training, he accidentally chopped off the palace of the third elder, and almost killed the third elder's most beloved disciple, Yu Wuji. Cough, cough, first time holding a treasured sword, don't you mind too much. After a long time, Qingshan Patriarch looked at the blue-faced master and apprentice and comforted softly. It is an honor for my ancestor to get the treasured saber. It's just a small accident, and it's not worth mentioning. But having said that, there are 10,000 Sao Naima galloping in the heart of the third elder. His palace, not to mention the construction, usually used the elders to loot countless financial resources. When this kitchen knife came down, it was completely ruined. It just hurts my heart. Yu Wuji wasn't much better either. His face was white and pure, but now it was a little paler, and he looked like a living dead person who wanted to die. What's even more shameful is that when someone was pulled out of the ruins, under the strong knife gas, the panties were shaken to pieces. He has now become a favorite joke of Qingshanmen, and everywhere people talk about how much he is. Okay, there is nothing special about today's meeting. Old ancestor Qingshan sat on the top and resumed his majesty. I just want to inform you that I have to be supported by a high-ranking ancestor, and I have received a treasured sword to increase my combat power. A battle with Xuanwu is no longer a problem. In the words, there is the spring breeze of Qingshan ancestors, and it also swept away the decadence of Qingshanmen. God bless me Qingshanmen, the crowd shouted, so you guys can rest easy. Old ancestor Qingshan's resounding voice spread throughout the audience, is there anything else you want to discuss, just leave. The next one, everyone, you look at me, I look at it, and they all see the same wish from the eyes of the other party. Finally, the great elder walked out and said respectfully, Ancestor, can you show us this treasured saber? Following his words, all hopeful eyes focused on him. Fine, old ancestor Qingshan nodded, although he was reluctant, but so many people wanted to see it, it was not easy to refuse. Then open your eyes and show me. After the words fell, the field suddenly became quiet. One by one, they held their breath and widened their eyes. Shish, a light lit up. In just a moment, the ancestor of Qingshan took the knife back, with a smug smile on his face, and said leisurely, how is it, have you seen it? Ancestor. The faces of everyone on the field were suffocated. With the speed of old ancestor Qingshan, they didn't see anything but a beam of light. Okay, the three elders, the two of you stay, and the others leave. Old ancestor Qingshan said impatiently. Everyone left unwillingly, leaving only the three elders with Yu Wuji. I don't know what is the important thing for the ancestor to keep the two of us. The third elder asked respectfully, hoping that the ancestor would compensate him for something. Destroyed your palace and hurt your disciples. I am sorry for the ancestors, and the sect has nothing to compensate you. I will make an exception and let the two of you take a look at this knife. Said. The third elder looked ugly. But being able to take a look at the treasured saber one more time is finally a compensation. Old ancestor Qingshan took out the knife again, but it lasted for a while, but at least the two of them were able to see the true appearance of the knife. The two of them never imagined that what was regarded as a treasure by Qingshan ancestors was actually a kitchen knife. Yes, kitchen knife. However, the two of them also really felt the power of this kitchen knife. The fierce aura and the strong martial intent fully represented that this was a peerless divine knife. Yu Wuji was careful, and recorded the image given by the knife with the jade slip. Old ancestor Qingshan just glanced at him and said nothing. After leaving the Qingshan hall, Yu Wuji rushed to the outer door. There were many people secretly pointing at him along the way, but due to his identity, ordinary disciples did not dare to be too blatant. But even so, it made his face gloomy enough. "Brother Wuji, I heard that you were injured, how are you?" Finally, a figure in a long dress walked towards Yu Wuji, and there were words of concern. She is Peng Ying. Since she officially joined Qingshanmen, her dress and temperament have improved qualitatively, and her appearance has become more beautiful. My eyesight is really good. With this beauty, I'm afraid I can enter the top 10 of Qingshan Gate. Yu Wuji's pale face flashed a sullen look. If it wasn't for Peng Ying's good foundation, as the elder's direct disciple, he wouldn't like a mortal who was not even fit to join the Qingshan sect. After approaching Peng Ying, the expression on his face disappeared, and he said gently, "Don't worry, I'm fine." "Seeing how pale you are, you still said you're fine." Peng Ying was worried and asked softly, "By the way, what's going on? How could you get hurt in the sect?" Peng Ying's question seemed to arouse Yu Wuji's bad memories. Shame and fear. At the moment when the knife was cut down, he really thought he was dead. However, Yu Wuji quickly put away the fear on his face and said lightly, "The ancestor got a treasured sword. The treasured sword is too powerful, even he can't fully control it, and by mistake, not only cut off my master's sword. Xingong, it just happened to hit me." Hearing this, Peng Ying's expression changed. Yu Wuji glanced at her, sighed with emotion, and said, "Speaking of which, taking this knife also took away a lot of my work. I almost ran out of cards, but I was still injured." Saying that, he looked at Peng Ying apologetically. "Yinger, I'm sorry, it's all useless to blame me, the injury worries you." "How could that be?" Peng Ying nervously held Yu Wuji's palm, and quickly comforted, "You can take the knife from the ancestor, this is a miracle, I'm afraid all the disciples can't do it." "What's the use, I'm still injured." Yu Wuji shook his head sadly. "You are really strong and great," Peng Ying said hurriedly. Yu Wuji turned his gaze towards her and asked, "Really? Really, you are the best in my heart." Peng Ying said solemnly. "Yinger, you are so kind." Yu Wuji said gently. With a slight movement of his palm, Peng Ying was hugged into his arms by him. Feeling the softness in his arms, Yu Wuji's mouth raised unconsciously. After some intimacy, Peng Ying asked curiously, "By the way, Brother Wuji, what kind of knife is the knife of the ancestor, how could he even be unable to control it?" Yu Wuji squinted his eyes, but this time there was no gesture on his face, and solemnly said, "This knife is indeed terrifying." "Oh," Peng Ying raised an eyebrow. "You can tell at a glance." With a wave of Yu Wuji's palm, a piece of jade slip appeared in his hand, and as the jade slip radiated light, a picture appeared in Peng Ying's eyes. On the screen, it is showing that the ancestor of Qingshan took out the knife in front of the third elder and Yu Wuji. Although it was only shown in the picture, at the moment when the knife came out, Peng Ying, who was still shocked by the powerful momentum, opened her red lips. Under the deterrence, his face turned pale. "Look, it's this knife." The picture is very short, and in such a short time, you can see the whole picture of the Peerless divine knife, and Yu Wuji quickly shouted at the opportunity. "A kitchen knife." When he saw the whole picture, Peng Ying asked in surprise. "Yes, a kitchen knife," Yu Wuji said with emotion. "I don't know the mentality of the senior who made this knife, but it doesn't matter, the important thing is that this knife is really strong. With this knife, presumably the battle between the ancestors and the Xuanwu ancestors is no longer a problem." Peng Ying nodded absently, as if thinking about something. "What's wrong, Yinger, what's on your mind?" Yu Wuji asked quickly and softly. "No, I just think this kitchen knife is very familiar, as if I've seen it somewhere." Peng Ying said. "Oh, don't think so much, you must be delusional." Yu Wuji smiled. "This level is regarded as a treasure by the ancestors, how could you have seen it?" "Right." Peng Ying also nodded, she also thought it was incredible to have such an idea. "Okay, I will let you join the inner sect as soon as possible." Yu Wuji took advantage of the situation and put his arms around Peng Ying's waist, and said gently, "It's just that we have to wait for a while, otherwise someone will always gossip." The waist twisted slightly. Peng Ying said gratefully, "Thank you, Brother Wujia, you are so kind." Late autumn. The fallen leaves cover the ground in a thick layer. The cold air finally came. Yifeng put on clothes, and even put a blanket on his reclining chair, but the heavy clothes still couldn't stop the humidity in the air. The biting cold made Yifeng freeze into a dog. Fortunately, although he is lazy as an earthling, he is really ingenious when he does it. He made a stove with a layer of reflective iron, and then put the flame bead in it, relying on the reflection of the iron to emit heat, and immediately warm Yifeng's body. The alien version of the little sun is the only one in the world, and the key is not to consume electricity. Yifeng raised the corner of his mouth and looked out of the street. Not far away, a desolate little figure walked back with a low head. Ah, Yifeng sighed, it seems that Zhang Qing is still not qualified enough to join Qingshanmen. I have seen Master. Yifeng nodded, handed him a smile, and said with a smile, it's cold, sit down and bake the fire. It's okay, Master, I'll go play 2 more sets of punches, then cook the rice, pick the vegetables, and wait for you to cook. Zhang Qing said softly, and walked towards the inner hall. Yifeng sighed. It's cold, and business is a lot colder. It seems that I need to carry out the next plan. Yifeng licked the dog beside him and came to the desk. Pick up the pen. After writing, Supreme Treasure and Zixia Fairy, has been written on the rice paper. This is also something Yifeng can't do. It's a bit too much to make ends meet simply by relying on the martial arts hall. Every winter, he will write some stories, hoping to sell them. In the previous winter, he had written a Dream of Red Mansions, but he didn't know why the audience was too small, and he didn't accidentally hit the streets. This year, he thought about it for a long time, and decided to write a book, Zixia Fairy and the Supreme Treasure. For a young man born in the 90s on Earth, the love between the two still brought him a lot of feelings. I don't need many people to see this, but occasionally some people buy it, and it is enough to improve his life. Fortunately, there was a chamber of commerce in Pingjiang City who had his help, so he could help with printing and selling. The rice paper was slowly filled with neat handwriting. Cough cough. There was a coughing sound from outside the door. Yifeng put down the pen and paper, got up and walked outside the door, smiling involuntarily at the corner of his mouth. Outside the door, there was an old man in a mink robe. The old man had a sharp face, and there was a staggered scar next to his nose. His surname is Wu. Speaking of which, this old man Wu is also an old friend of his. However, in Yifeng's view, this old man is not so normal. Every time I came to him, I would stand outside the door, staring at the plaque of his martial arts hall for a long time, not knowing what he was doing. Really, the old man was in a daze again. Brother, long time no see. After a long time, the old man slowed down and greeted Yifeng. Yifeng's mouth twitched. What age am I, and what age is your old man, don't you have any doubts? When you talk, you always look like a new-year-old friend. I don't know what the old man is doing wrong. However, since the two met, this old man Wu called him that, and Yifeng was used to it, so he also called him that. Brother Wu, long time no see. Yifeng shouted. Haha, dude impresses me. Looking at Yifeng, who was well dressed, a shrewdness flashed in his eyes, and he said with a smile, we are the same kind of people, brother Yi, you are more extreme than me. Ah, Yifeng was stunned, but didn't listen. Understand. However, the old man was used to gossip and didn't care, and shouted, it's cold outside, do you want to come in and sit? Old man Wu nodded and walked towards Yifeng. He didn't enter Yifeng's martial arts hall as before, but sat down on the steps at the door. As if he knew what he wanted to say, Yifeng said quickly, yes, you were right, peeping into the cave is a big taboo for me, so there is no need to be more polite between you and me. After speaking, Yifeng twitched the corners of his mouth, but he didn't catch a cold. Of course, at the beginning, Yifeng didn't guess that this guy was a cultivating hermit master, right? But after being in contact for a long time, Yifeng has long dismissed this idea. Which high-ranking hermit would look like this? Isn't he above the clouds, aloft? It's just that he was frustrated when he was a teenager, he had a dream of cultivation, and the change of age didn't make this middle-aged aura diminish. It's only middle school. Yifeng can also understand that no one has gone to secondary school. I have watched a lot of martial arts movies in my previous life. I cut bamboo into a long sword shape and carried it behind my back. When I used the sword, I always chopped up the dog's tail grass in front of my grandmother's house in the countryside, and my mouth even had a sound effect. Of course, it is indeed rare for such a large number of people who are still in secondary school. Then Yi Feng entered the room and took out a small table, while holding a pair of homemade chess in his hand. As a native of Yanwang, how could he not bring this essence to another world? Of course, this is something that Yi Feng can't get rid of time. The reason why I met Old Man Wu was also because when Yi Feng was teaching an old man in the neighborhood how to play chess, he happened to pass by and was very interested in it. Since then, he has come to Yi Feng, not for other things, but only to play chess. Outside the street, the autumn wind is bleak. Gradually, a light rain started to fall, tick-tock down the eaves, and sat beside the table on the steps, one old and one young. A white robe, one man in a suit. Let the wind and rain come, the two of them were as still as a mountain, their eyes fixed on the chessboard. To be honest, when I first started, I thought I was on the same level as you. Old Man Wu dropped the chess piece and raised the corner of his eyes. Ha ha, Yi Feng smiled without saying a word. But I looked carefully, and I couldn't see through you. Old Man Wu said with a frown again. Of course you can't see through me. Yi Feng smiled, with a meaningful expression on his face. At the same time, the gun truck in his hand fell silently, and he was quite complacent. How could Old Man Wu see through his layout? And in a few more steps, he will be able to general. Yi Feng's words made Old Man Wu frown. Because it doesn't sound like big talk. Especially the complacent look on Yi Feng's face, it was a matter of course. Is he really stronger than me? Old Man Wu felt a little uncomfortable. Maybe he wouldn't have the slightest obsession with other things, but in this situation, the same two people would inevitably make him feel a little bit of comparison. Do not. He quickly dismissed the thoughts in his mind. The whole world is so big, and there are so many secrets of various exercises. It is no exaggeration that Yi Feng has practiced a type of exercise that makes others unable to see through his cultivation. He can't see through, doesn't mean he's really worse than him. Brother Yi, you are complacent about what you said. Old Man Wu smiled, while the piece in his hand devoured Yi Feng's horse, and after putting away Yi Feng's piece, he said meaningfully, even if you don't see it through you, but I think we are still on the same level. That's unlikely. Yi Feng's face is still confident. How can he be on the same level as him after eating one of his horses? You don't know that this horse was specially made for him to eat, because there is only one step left, and he can be the general. Seeing the confident look on Yi Feng's face, Old Man Wu's heart trembled again. Is he really stronger than me? Otherwise, why is he so confident? However, if there really is such a person, who is not an unknown person in the cultivation world, why have I never heard of it? Yi Feng dropped the chess piece in his hand and stretched out with a smile. When he came out of the chess game, he realized that it was a little cold. Then he walked into the house and lifted his little son out. Afterwards, it was gently placed under the table. Old Man Wu's eyes stared fiercely, and his body couldn't help but tremble. This is fire beads. Call. Even Old Man Wu couldn't help taking a deep breath at this moment. He raised his head and glanced at Yi Feng, who was opposite him, with a deep meaning. In his opinion, Yi Feng took out the flame bead as a response to the doubts in his heart. It's like saying, I can take out the flame beads at will, but what about you? At this time, Yi Feng noticed Old Man Wu's gaze, and smiled and nodded at him, showing an expression of acceptance. After all, he won this chess game effortlessly. Really. Seeing this, Old Man Wu was sure that Yi Feng was really what he thought. He took a look at chess. Yes, he lost chess, but he didn't care about it anymore. The two had risen from chess to another level of competition. It has to be said that he never expected that Yi Feng would be able to take out the flame beads. The value of this flame bead is more expensive than expected. There are also water spirit beads, earth domain beads, diamond beads, and wood breath beads that match their value. If the 5 orbs are combined, they can become immeasurable beads, which can make a mortal who has never practiced become holy in an instant. According to legend, there was a heaven-passing great master in Beihai who had already collected 4 other spirit orbs, but only 1 flame orb was missing. But I didn't expect that this flame bead is here. If you take this bead and exchange it with the great power who is just 1 flame bead away, you can almost exchange for a treasure that surpasses this bead countless times. However, he didn't. Why? With his cultivation base, it is unlikely that he did not know about this. That means that he knew that he could exchange the flame beads for something of higher value, but he didn't change it, which means that he didn't need things that were several times more valuable than the flame beads. Even, it doesn't look like. This person, whose cultivation base is incomprehensible, is a little more powerful than I imagined. Old Man Wu looked at Yifeng and made such a judgment in his heart. It seems to be taking out a flame bead, but the value it represents is far more than a flame bead. In other words, if he wants to be better in this competition, he must come up with a treasure that is several times higher than the flame bead. No wonder he was able to be so confident. But, you seem to underestimate me too. Old Wu's eagle eyes flashed sharply, and he really had such a thing in his hand. Brother Yi, help me see this. With a wave of his palm, a rake with 7 teeth appeared in his hand. Seeing the rake that suddenly appeared in his hand, Yifeng didn't care. It is estimated that the old man just came back from farming. This rake is probably not very easy to use. Knowing that he is a part-time ironsmith, I asked him to help. Then take a look at it. Yifeng took it over and looked at it carefully. Seeing Yifeng's scrutinizing expression, Old Man Wu smiled complacently. His 7-toothed holy rake looks dull and has no bright spots, but it is a sacred artifact handed down from ancient times, but it has the level of a holy grade. Even if it is damaged, if it is motivated by vitality, it can still play a role 1/10 of the power of a holy product. Holy product. Legendary stuff. Even if it is slightly broken, its value is by no means comparable to that of a flame bead. And this, I believe that Yifeng's cultivation base can definitely be seen. So at this moment, he even saw Yifeng's jaw dropping in shock. Speaking of which, he got this 7-toothed holy rake, but he spent all his life savings, and even lost half of his life to get it, so it is not an exaggeration to be surprised how Yifeng will be later. Just as the old man Wu smiled and waited for Yifeng to be surprised, Yifeng put the rake in his hand. There is something wrong with your rake head. Yifeng shook his head, and then said softly, and it's not very easy to use. Although the rake head is not much broken, some places on it are rusted, and the shape is too ugly. I don't know if it was designed by that stupid thing. It is estimated that Old Man Wu used this rake head to rake the soil. Also hard work. What? In the imagination, Yifeng was not shocked, and he even devalued his holy rake, and the Old Man Wu immediately froze and stood up abruptly. If it wasn't for him who still couldn't see Yifeng's cultivation level clearly and didn't dare to act rashly, he would have fought against Yifeng long ago. Tang Tang is close to the holy product, something that he has been proud of all his life. To be desecrated by Yifeng like this, it is simply unbearable or unbearable. Yifeng was a little puzzled at first when he saw the frying appearance of Old Man Wu, but he could understand it after thinking about it. Although this is the cultivation world, most of them are ordinary people. The ordinary people here are no different from ordinary people on Earth. Most of them rely on farming for food. As for Old Man Wu, this raking head is the guy who eats, and the guy who eats has a problem, so it's no wonder he's not in a hurry. Don't get excited. Yifeng raised his hand to comfort him. But the Old Man Wu was still blushing, staring at Yifeng. His heart was already full of anger. Wait for me a moment. Yifeng got up and walked into the inner room. Okay, since you look down on my 7-toothed holy rake so much, then I want to see what else you can come up with that is comparable to my 7-toothed holy rake. Seeing Yifeng entering the room, Old Man Wu he blushed and muttered secretly. Yifeng returned to the house for a moment, then came out again, and said at the same time, the rake head in your hand is too broken, throw it away. Yifeng's words immediately caused Old Man Wu to boil with anger and rushed to his forehead. It's okay to belittle his 7-toothed holy rake, but he actually said that the 7-toothed holy rake is too broken and lost. This is no longer a belittling, but a mockery. Kai Guguo's mockery. Whether it is bearable or unbearable, as soon as he stood up abruptly, he asked Yifeng to give an explanation. But the next moment, he was stunned. Like lightning strikes. His eyes were fixed on Yifeng's hand, the brand new rake. As if afraid that he was wrong, he quickly rubbed his eyes, and when he saw it again, he couldn't help but take a deep breath. This is. For a time, he became inarticulate, and his body couldn't help shaking. The shock in his heart at this moment can't be described in words, because the rake in Yifeng's hand is a real holy product. And it is a brand new holy rake that is not broken in the slightest. Call. After a long time, the old man Wu took a deep breath and looked at Yifeng with a deeper look. No wonder this person would be so belittling and ridiculing his seven-toothed holy rake. It turned out that he had a real holy product in his hand. At the same time as old man Wu felt aggrieved and uncomfortable, he could no longer be angry in his heart. His seven-toothed rake is indeed precious, but it is really not worth mentioning in front of the real holy product. Who the hell are you? Old man Wu frowned, stared at Yifeng and asked word by word. Who do you say I am? It is estimated that the old man's second-year illness was committed again, and Yifeng gave him a direct look. Old man Wu nodded. Yes, a person who took out a flame bead and a sacred object at random. Who is he? Is it still unclear? He slumped down on the stool. Although he has always been unable to see through Yifeng's cultivation, he always believed that the two should be at the same level, which could not help arouse his competitive spirit. So the obsession in his heart made him want to compare himself with Yifeng. But the end result was not what he wanted. He also finally understood that he couldn't see through Yifeng's cultivation. It wasn't because Yifeng practiced some unknown technique, but it was so strong that he couldn't see through it. He was no longer competitive. On the contrary, Yifeng looked at Yifeng with a little fear and respect. After all, the strong are respected in this world. Yifeng was stunned when he saw Wu Lao's hair, and couldn't help shouting, "Hey brother, what are you stunned for?" Hearing this, the old man Wu had an ugly face and a look of shame, so he could only smile awkwardly at Yifeng. Yes, take it and keep it for good use. Yifeng handed over the rake in his hand and said with a smile. Old man Wu didn't react at first, but after reacting, his mind was like a lightning strike. He stood up abruptly and stared at Yifeng. What? Give me. Old man Wu's palm couldn't help shaking, and he asked solemnly again, what do you mean, this is for me? Yes, for you. Yifeng waved his hand and said indifferently. The old man Wu suddenly took a deep breath. He felt a little dreamy, and he still couldn't believe it. He asked again, really for me? It's just a rake, it's no big deal. Yifeng said nonchalantly. Isn't it just a rake? Yifeng's words immediately caused old man Wu to roll his eyes and almost didn't take it. But in response, he was even more shocked and incredible, because he found that he had underestimated Yifeng before, and Yifeng's rank in his heart had risen to a new level. I can't help but guess, who is this old monster who looks young but doesn't know how many years he has lived? Even the dignified and holy things are so dismissive. Of course, I don't give you this rake head for nothing. Yifeng then added that although he really wanted to give this rake head directly to the old man, he wasn't a virgin to this point. After all, in terms of economic situation, he is now a mud bodhisattva crossing the river, and he cannot protect himself. Old man Wu nodded. He never thought that Yifeng would give him a holy weapon for free. After all, this kind of sacred item itself is hard to come by. Even if many people have sky-high treasures, they may not be able to exchange for one holy soldier. So he was also apprehensive. What exactly will Yifeng make him pay for, or make him do? And can you do it yourself? For a while, he squatted on the small stool, like a child, eagerly waiting for Yifeng's next words. We are also old friends. We will definitely not take it as the market price with you. I will give you a 50% discount. Yifeng said with a smile. The 50% discount is also the lowest price in his heart. Although this old man is a farmer, yes, but a 50% off rake head should also be affordable. Hearing this, old man Wu's body trembled. 50% off the holy rake, if such a good thing is said, I am afraid it will be enough to cause the madness of countless old monsters across the continent. But what made him uncomfortable was that even if it was a 50% discount, he couldn't afford it at all. You know, at that time, his broken seven-tooth holy rake almost used up his savings for so many years, and the 50% discount far exceeded the value of the seven-toothed holy rake. How to do? Is the opportunity of God-given opportunity just missed? The old man Wu held his face and felt extremely uncomfortable. Seemingly aware of old man Wu's embarrassment, Yifeng frowned and asked, what's the matter, old man Wu, is there not enough money? The old man Wu had a face full of shame, lowered his head and nodded bitterly. Well, Yifeng couldn't help but sigh. It seemed that the old man was even poorer than he thought. What should we do? Seeing Yi Feng sighing, Old Man Wu was extremely nervous. If Yi Feng took back this opportunity, he would be uncomfortable, so he raised his head and asked nervously, Brother Yi, no, Yi sir, how about? Yi Feng looked at him. I still have one thing to do. When I finish this thing, I would like to respect you as the master and follow you. Look. After that, Old Man Wu looked nervously at Yi Feng. He didn't know whether Yi Feng would answer or not. Follow me. Yi Feng was stunned for a moment, and couldn't help but glanced at his mouth. Did this old man suffer from the second disease again? Not to mention that a rakehead can't rise to this level. Take a step back, what's the use of this old man following him? In addition to an extra mouth to eat, maybe one day when Gabang died, he would have to pay for the coffin. All right. When Old Man Wu saw this, his face was full of disappointment, and he immediately understood that Yi Feng was not willing to accept this condition. However, it is true that Yi Feng is stronger than him, and it is useless to have such a follower as him. Why not? Yi Feng thought for a while, then said, take the rake first, and if you have the money, you can put it together first, and then give it to me when you have it. After speaking, Yi Feng looked at him. This can be regarded as his biggest concession. If he has the financial ability to give it to the old man, it doesn't matter, but he doesn't want to make a swollen face and make a fat man. Yi Feng's words immediately made Old Man Wu extremely excited, and he was full of gratitude and respect for Yi Feng. I thought he was missing this god rake, but he didn't expect that Yi Feng would actually be willing to take such a big step back. Mr. Yi, your kindness will be remembered by this old man. Maybe you will never use me in your life, but I, Wu Yonghong, swear here that if you have any useful place to find me, you will die. After speaking, he stood up and bowed very solemnly to Yi Feng. With Wu Yonghong's oath, the clouds over the entire Pingzhong city suddenly changed, 2 electric lights flashed in the sky, and a mysterious contract entered Wu Yonghong's mind. Pledge of oath. If it is violated, it is bound to be destroyed. Let's go, let's go, let's go. Yi Feng waved his hand impatiently. He really couldn't stand the old man's second-class atmosphere, and quickly sent him away. After sending Old Man Wu away, Yi Feng continued to return to the desk. In the following time, he was immersed in the book, Fairy Zixia and the Supreme Treasure, and stayed out all day. With the arrival of autumn, the autumn wind outside the street became more and more bleak, but it did not affect Yi Feng. Even if it was the biting cold air, Yi Feng was not afraid under the resistance of the little sun. It seems that this year's Yi Feng can have a comfortable winter. Zhang Qing is still taciturn, practicing boxing hard every day, and at the same time busy with the big and small household chores in the martial arts hall. The second dog, Ao Qing, was lying at Yi Feng's feet, and the injuries in his body had long since fully recovered. Occasionally watching Yi Feng punching, and occasionally watching the pictures in the front hall of the martial arts hall, his strength turned out to be advancing by leaps and bounds. On this day, the ancestor of Qingshan came to visit. When he came, he seemed to have something on his mind. Yi Feng saw his state and brought out some chicken soup for the soul from his previous life to comfort him. Yi Feng didn't know if it was of any use, but he only knew that the ancestor of Qingshan was full of confidence when he left. The next day, after Yi Feng finished a set of Tai Chi, he stretched out, and was about to go to the street to order some wine, but found that the street today is much cooler than before. What's going on? Yi Feng sat down at the beef stall opposite, and asked, on weekdays, I see some cultivating disciples shopping on the street, how can it be so cold today? I'm afraid Master Yi still doesn't know. The servant saw Yi Feng with wine in his hand, and generously brought him 2 tails of beef on a plate, then looked at the distant sky and said, today is Patriarch Qingshan and Patriarch Xuanwu. On the duel day, the cultivators rushed to see their battle, the battle on the top floor. After all, this is related to the life and death of the 2 major sects. Oh, Yi Feng nodded. He really didn't care much about the cultivator, but he seemed to have heard of this before. After eating 2 tails of beef and 2 tails of spirits at the servant's place, he rushed back to the martial arts hall with a warm body and continued to write books. There is a natural canyon between Qingshanmen and Xuanwuzong. In the middle of the canyon, there is a platform with a range of thousands of feet, which is the wind and rain platform. On the storm deck, old ancestor Qingshan's eyes were sharp, and his whole body burst out. Ancestor Xuanwu had white hair and a sneer on his face. On both sides of the canyon, One side was full of disciples of Xuanwu Sect, while the other side was full of disciples of Qingshan Sect, and everyone had a solemn expression on their faces. The battle between the two is related to the future of all of them. Qingshan, I didn't expect you to really dare to come, Xuanwu Patriarch said jokingly. Humph, old ancestor Qingshan snorted coldly, but did not say much. Suffer to death. The two of them didn't seem to have had much foreplay either. Xuanwu's aura was revealed, and he swept up into the air like lightning, and then an invincible palm shot towards Qingshan's ancestor. At this moment, the power of King Wu's realm was clearly evident in Zan Wu's hands. Before the attack arrived, the rocks at the foot of the ancestors of Qingshan were already cracking open one after another, like a spider web spreading. The ancestor of Qingshan was unwilling to be left behind. The same momentum burst out. When the soles of his feet smashed the ground, a big pit appeared on the ground, and his lightning-like body greeted this palm print. Boom! The sound of the sky breaking and the earth cracking resounded above the wind and rain platform. Countless qi energy spread out in all directions, and the disciples watching from a distance couldn't help but push back again and again under this powerful qi energy. The strength of the two great martial kings is truly terrifying. But everyone couldn't care about the retreating body, and their eyes were like pinholes looking at the sky. Just saw, in the energy, a figure retreated hundreds of feet in midair. It is the ancestor of Qingshan. Seeing this, the expressions of everyone in Qingshanmen sank collectively. In the crowd, Peng Ying was holding her jade hand with a pale face. She has joined Qingshanmen for a while, and she understands the meaning of this battle. Could it be that she finally joins Qingshanmen, and she will face the collapse of Qingshanmen? On the other hand, Xuanwumen was different, and suddenly gave out earth-shattering cheers. Ha ha ha, Qingshan, you really are a waste, next year's day will be your death day. In midair, the Xuanwu ancestor burst into laughter, with a strong joking look on his face. Old ancestor Qingshan's face was ugly when he heard the words, and the gap between the two was really big. Die. Ancestor Xuanwu obviously knew the reason for beating the reservoir dog, and without too much delay, he swept up in the air like a ghost, and slapped the old ancestor Qingshan with his destructive palm. This palm, compared with the previous palm, the power is more powerful and the momentum is more fierce. If ancestor Qingshan only had the kind of strength he just showed, he would be seriously injured if he didn't die in the face of ancestor Xuanwu's palm. The palm print shrouded the vitality and became larger and larger in the sky, illuminating half of the sky, and at the same time getting closer and closer to the ancestor of Qingshan. But the ancestor of Qingshan did not move at all. Seeing this, many people who came to watch the battle shook their heads, and many people speculated that this was the ancestor of Qingshan who knew that he was invincible and gave up resistance. In particular, the people at Qingshanmen were even more ashamed. With this palm down, it seems to have seen the scene of the Qingshan gate being destroyed. When the palm print was less than 30 feet away from the ancestor of Qingshan, there was a sneer on the face of the ancestor of Qingshan, and then he took out a kitchen knife from his arms. Finally, it's me. See this scene. Countless people watching the battle were all shocked. A kitchen knife. Afterwards, the direction of Xuanwuzong let out a burst of playful laughter. A kitchen knife really made me laugh to death. Ha ha ha. Yes, the weapon of the dignified Qingshan ancestor is just a kitchen knife. Qingshanmen wouldn't be in such a low state, wouldn't this Qingshan ancestor take the kitchen knife of their Qingshanmen back kitchen. Everyone in Qingshanmen listened to this harsh voice, and they were all extremely ugly. Although they have seen this kitchen knife, they do not have much confidence in its power in actual combat. Qingshan, you really are at the end of the road, and you are fighting with me with a kitchen knife. Who are you looking down on? Xuanwu ancestor pushed his palm print condescendingly, and said with disdain. Try it, and then you'll know. Old ancestor Qingshan said with an expressionless face, and at the same time as the voice fell, his pupils shrank suddenly, and his palms waved out. Then, a kitchen knife slashed towards Xuanwu without any fancy. Everyone shook their heads. This is undoubtedly an egg hitting a stone. But the next moment, the ordinary kitchen knife suddenly burst into a dazzling light, and then pulled out a knife light that was thousands of feet long. Under this knife light, everyone could not open their eyes. At the same time, an invincible aura permeated the entire wind and rain platform, and those with weaker cultivation even had the urge to crawl. Of course, the first to bear the brunt is Xuanwu Patriarch. Stronger than him, under this light, he also felt unusually small, and the sneer on his face suddenly solidified. A knife. Then he directly broke Xuanwu's palm print, destroying the dead, and even cutting off an arm of Xuanwu's ancestor. Huge pain and strength swept back on the body of the Xuanwu ancestor, and the Xuanwu ancestor accompanied the screams, scurrying over the wind and rain platform like a fly. Call. What? Seeing this scene, everyone present was in disbelief, and they all took a breath of cold air, and the Qingshan gate broke out with unprecedented cheers. At the same time, a pair of fiery eyes focused on the kitchen knife in the hands of Qingshan ancestors. The power of this kitchen knife is beyond everyone's expectations, and it is so terrifying. In the crowd, Peng Ying's red lips were open in surprise. Although she had seen this kitchen knife in Wu Jia's jade slip, she was definitely not as shocked as she had seen it with her own eyes. What's even more incredible is that she is more and more familiar with this kitchen knife. She even felt that she had seen it more than once, but the strong shock made her unable to remember where she had seen it for a while. Of course, I also feel that this feeling is too far-fetched. How could she have seen this kind of top artifact, a person who entered the back door of Qingshan Gate? Ha ha ha. Old ancestor Qingshan was also shocked by his own knife, and burst into a confident laugh in midair. Qingshan, you despicable villain, why do you have such a terrifying artifact? Ancestor Xuanwu shouted angrily, if you have the kind, put down your kitchen knife and fight me fairly, otherwise you are a hero. Hero. Put down the kitchen knife for a fair fight. You think beautifully, but I don't bully you, why? Humph. Old ancestor Qingshan snorted angrily, and with a loud laugh, held a kitchen knife across an arc in the air, and attacked old ancestor Xuanwu. The ancestor of Xuanwu was full of fear, and he did not dare to confront the ancestor of Qingshan head-on, turning into an arc and running away. In the blink of an eye, the two old ancestors flew from the wind and rain platform one after the other, and soon reached the midair of Pingzhong City. Boom. Laugh. Call. The Qingshan ancestor who chased the Xuanwu ancestor slashed with a kitchen knife, and the powerful might made the whole sky reverberate. The ancestor of Xuanwu was in danger, and he was extremely embarrassed. In the face of this terrifying kitchen knife, he could only run. Then, the two old ancestors flew over Pingzhong again, and they didn't know where they went. You fool! Yi Feng, who was upset by the noise, cursed, put down the pen and paper and walked out the door. Looking at the fluctuation of energy remaining in the sky, he suddenly understood that there were cultivators fighting again. Which son of a fool is he? If you don't know how to fight, get out of the way, bah! Yi Feng spit out a mouthful of spit, and then walked back to the martial arts hall in embarrassment. After the sound subsided, he calmed down and resumed writing. In the next half-month, Yi Feng could be regarded as completing the book, Fairy Zixia and the Supreme Treasure, in his hand, and then got up and walked towards the Pingzhong Chamber of Commerce. Yi Feng was received by Mao Lin, the president of the Pingzhong Chamber of Commerce. As the chairman of the Chamber of Commerce, his status is much better than that of ordinary people. Originally, such a person would not come to receive people in person, but Mao Lin once went into the mountain with the Chamber of Commerce and was bitten by a poisonous snake. It didn't look good, but Yi Feng's herbs cured him, so Yi Feng could be regarded as Mao Lin's benefactor. Hee, Master Yi, please have some tea. Mao Lin sat at the top. As the chairman of the Chamber of Commerce, he was naturally dressed in luxurious clothes, his face was red, he glanced at Yi Feng without any trace, and then asked, I do not know that Master Yi is here for me this time. Chamber of Commerce, what's the matter? Quote, no, do you want me to print those useless fairy tales again? Hearing this, Yi Feng frowned slightly, and at the same time his face became a little embarrassed. Master Yi, to be honest, you come to sit with me, I can welcome you, after all, you can be considered my benefactor. Mao Lin picked up the teacup, took a sip, and continued, but if you want to print that useless thing again, I can't help you, although it's not a big deal, but it's really not profitable for our Chamber of Commerce. After all, with so many people in our Chamber of Commerce, we always have to eat, and interests are the first, don't you think? All right, Yi Feng pursed his lips and sighed in his heart. Even so, he was too lazy to stay. Just as he was about to get up and leave, the door was pushed open, and a figure came in. She is tall and slender, with beautiful features and eyebrows. She is dressed in long red satin, which outlines the beautiful waist of a water snake. Yuner, didn't you see that I was receiving guests? Why did you break in so rudely? Mao Lin said reproachfully, but his eyes were full of love. Father, I just wanted to ask, can you find the author of this, Dream of Red Mansions? The woman called Yuner said coquettishly. Judging from the title, this should be the Pearl of the Chamber of Commerce, the daughter of Mao Lin. Mao Yuner. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.